which is awesome, right? It's great to see your observations coming across the pipe and the many things that I'm beginning to see you guys do. It's just awesome. But let me read this to you. Here's a comment. Brad Brunn, by the way, thank you, bro, for your support. You support us in a lot of ways, bro. Not just with your super chats, but he's on my research team. Smart guy, very, very just a solid brother. Anyway, he says, yesterday the NAIA stated women's sports were only for actual women. Finally, college sports getting back to what it should be, not women pretending to be men, but athletes pretending to be students. I love the athletes pretending to be students part. That's pretty funny. I actually really like that. I think there's a lot of good, solid, dry humor in that. Your humor is very similar to mine, Brad, but thank you for the support. Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff hot off the press that we're going to talk about, some interesting stories. My most recent, as we would call it, intelligence report has got some very, very telling items in it, especially when we start looking at things that are beginning to happen and that are going on, and they all tie into many of the things that people are talking about, right? The eclipse has come and gone. All the different signs around us that people have been saying, lean in on, have all come and gone, and yet we have not seen a rapture yet, right? Should not be a surprise to us. I just want to make that very, very clear. However, there are things that God tells us to look out for, right? There are things that he warns us concerning, that he says, hey, you need to be aware of these things. You need to keep these things in mind. But let me go back before I even get into some of these headlines, because these headlines are going to be relevant to some of the things that we're talking about. And I do want to spend some time talking about some of the headlines, because that's something that we always do, right? I want to get into Matthew 16 for just a second, because I want to read it. I do share this, by the way, in the video that I'm releasing tomorrow, and I'm very looking forward to that video when we get that video released. By the way, I can just tell you this. Can you sense, and I'll be looking for your answers in the comments. Can you sense that we are living in just an extraordinarily dark time right now? I mean,
Polydent offers strong hold and superior comfort. If your mouth could talk, it would ask for Polydent.
Playing by yourself again?
It's Match Masters. I'm playing with people from all over the world.
Where's the Foxy Boost?
Check it out.
Nice move. Match Masters. Who will you match against?
it's getting super bad. It's getting really bad. Can I give you an example of how dark the times are becoming? Former President Trump decides that he's going to release a video that outlines his view on the subject of abortion. And of course, what he does is extraordinarily disappointing. As a matter of fact, what he does is just outright wrong. God hates it. But he comes out and he says, well, Roe v. Wade is wonderful that we had overturned. He was very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. I think that that's something to be proud of. I wish he had stopped there. But instead, he said, well, abortion is a decision for states to make, which I think there should be a federal ban on it, but that's a whole other story. He says it's a decision for the states to make. And then he goes on to say this. Watch this. He goes on to say that abortion should be allowed in the context of rape, incest, and the health of a mother. Which, by the way, we still don't have a lot of documented situations where the health of the mother is actually being threatened by a baby that's alive in the mother's womb. Most of the time, the baby's already stillborn by the time that happens, but that's a completely different story. So he says this. I immediately come out and I condemn it. And upon condemning it, I get slammed by a whole bunch of people who have established a cult-like following of the former president, which, by the way, I want to say this for the record. I voted for him in 2016. I voted for him in 2020. I've been encouraging people to vote for him all throughout this whole time. But at this point, I am extraordinarily grieved by what he said concerning all this, and I'm getting beat up by everybody. I mean, people are beating me up left and right for basically saying that it's God before Trump, that it's God before anybody. It's God before my wife. It's God before my children. It's God before my family, right? So this is really bad. Now, I want you to catch the pattern because this is really important because I think we got to talk about this for just a second, right? Trump makes the statement that he makes, and immediately Carrie Lake comes out, who's running for office in Arizona, and says virtually the exact same thing. The thing that a lot of people might not notice is that there are other politicians in the Republican Party that are now coming out and repeating the same thing. It's very important to note that. Then this is what happens. Watch this. Pay very special attention to what takes place next. Then the next day, a ban that has...
Hey, Phil, good to see you. Mate, did you get a notification? Because I didn't get a notification.
Existed in Arizona law on abortion was finally ruled upon and held up and is now the law of the land in Arizona, where you pretty much, it's almost impossible to have an abortion in the state of Arizona. And here's the thing that's really interesting, right? We see this taking place, and immediately, Carrie Lake comes out and says, this is bad, this is not a good thing. And guess who else comes out and does the same thing? The former president of the United States. Donald Trump comes out and basically says it's a bad thing that this ban has gone on. It's referred to as even draconian. And President Trump has actually stood out and said he's going to deal with it. In other words, he's going to correct it when he comes back in office. What happened? What happened to former President Trump? Here's the thing that is astounding to me, right? Not only am I getting beat up by a lot of people while bringing this stuff up, but it's amazing. It's amazing how many crickets I'm hearing. Like literal crickets. How many crickets I'm hearing? When, in essence, everybody, listen to me when I say this, folks. Everybody who has been kicking and screaming about pro-life, an overwhelming majority of them are being quiet. They're not saying anything about this. They're not coming out. They're not condemning the president. They're not saying anything. And I can make this statement.
Hey, Maya, good to see you.
Reasonable confidence. There are people who run pro-life ministries right now.
Maya, did you get a notification? Because I didn't get a notification. I watch this on a different channel.
We speak. They're called pro-life ministries. They're running these pro-life ministries, but the reality of it is they want some abortion to still take place. Because if no abortions take place, then they no longer have a reason to gain funding to be able to create the empire that they're wanting to create. And so the reality of it is,
I wonder why.
In certain areas and not put pressure where pressure should be placed. Folks, that is how dark this world is getting. The world is getting darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. And I've said this before. Imagine if all of the Christian world came out and basically spanked Trump and said, shame on you. Reverse your position. You understand, guys, what's going on? When President Trump goes out there and makes this statement regarding abortion, he's doing it in the name of wanting more votes. He is being convinced by a bunch of non-Christ-centered individuals, people who don't know what it means to rest in the power of the Holy Spirit and trust in the mighty hand of God to orchestrate things. He's being told there are people in his ear. I'm almost certain of this. This is my assumption, right? Because President Trump has never been known to be somebody who just all of a sudden just makes a decision out of the blue. Okay? He speaks to people. He consults people. And I can tell you that there are people that are undoubtedly close to him that are encouraging him to embrace abortion whole hog. How do I know that? Because there are people that talk about it all the time that are close to him. They make their position known. This is something that we don't know. So there are people in his ear that are encouraging abortion, which, by the way, can I just make a statement here? This is why we should pray for people like Jack Hibbs and Charlie Kirk and many others who are regularly talking to former President Trump, to be bold voices in his ear and to basically tell him, hey, this is what's going on. And by the way, without knowing what's going on in the background, I can tell you this right now. I can guarantee you that some of these brothers are being very faithful to tell the president what he needs to hear in order to make a godly decision. I can promise you that. Because I know that Pastor Jack, and I even know, for example, Charlie Kirk, does not support abortion. They hate it. Especially Pastor Jack, right? He's made a whole life out of fighting it. So we need to pray that God gives them wisdom in making these statements. But let me go back to where I'm going with this, okay? By the way, Virginia Lee, thank you so much. God bless you. Before I read Matthew 16, because
Hey, Bass, good to see you, bro.
Conversation regarding the end times. This is the situation. That man is probably being told. This is my guess. He is probably being told by some pretty wicked people.
Vast. Every time I type hi Vast, it automatically goes to a B, so it says hi Vast. Unless I fix it, that's what comes over. It's annoying.
That he can't win the election unless
Done it
he
again.
actually supports abortion. This is the truth. I'm telling you. But here's my statement about that, because this is really, really important. And I want everybody to pay attention to this and get this statement in your head. Like, literally, commit to this statement. It's a really important one, okay? Donald Trump, by changing his position on the subject of abortion or making these statements about abortion, is doing it in an attempt to get votes he may never get, while at the same time forfeiting votes that for sure he was going to get. So you're going to give up the votes that you have for sure in order to try to get votes that you may not even get in the first place. That's exactly what's going on with the president right now, with the former president. He's been given very, very bad advice. Vindog says this: Carrie Lake is a fake Christian. If Mike Johnson tell the guys in Louisiana to kill the abortion bill, Trump is a chump. I never thought I'd hear Vinny say that, right? But a lot of people are saying that now because his statement is wrong. His statement is wrong. And by the way, I know, like Nicole, I get where you're coming from. I will say this, Nicole WB, you've always been a very astute person, which is why I very much respect your opinion. And all of you guys that are in the chat, like I very much respect your opinion. But Nicole says something interesting, right? And I'll just address it. You say, I disagree. He's got the conservatives. He needs the independents. The problem is, and listen to me good, Nicole, please listen to me. He's going to lose conservatives. As a matter of fact, can I just say this right now? He already has lost conservatives. He's lost me, and he's losing a whole bunch of other people unless he changes his mind about this position. Because think about this. Whether or not the future of our nation is at stake,
Diane, good to see you.
Doesn't matter. Is there anybody in the chat?
For some reason, notices didn't get posted out. And guys, I'll tell you why I didn't go live on Tuesday, because I couldn't get into the room until 2 o'clock. And that's when I usually hang up. And the eclipse had already happened. So I thought, well, there's no point doing it. Then we had Wednesday, the funeral, and we didn't get home till yesterday afternoon, till 2:30. But yeah, so I really miss streaming, but that's what happened.
Right now, and I'm asking you this question. Nicole, I know what your answer is going to be. You're a righteous woman. I already know what your answer is going to be. But is it, well, and you're right, conservatives won't vote for Biden. You're right. But what's going to be the alternative? Think about it like this. Is there anybody right now in this chat that would vote for somebody that they know at any level?
And Diane, I'm going to get Gabe to get that, create another Skype account so I can get back on Misfits and Jesus and with you and Phil again. So I'll get that done today as well.
Would allow abortion to take place. I won't. Right? And I respect your perspectives, folks, because the whole idea behind what we do is we have diverse opinions, and the diversity in our opinions is an important one. Right? Look, I'm just seeing no. I'm seeing no everywhere, right? But Nicole brings up a good point. Like, I'm not here to put down her point here. I think her point is astute, right? There are people, because they know it will be much worse with Biden, that will vote for Trump, understanding that. But what I'm trying to point out is that the Republican Party, under the leadership of President Trump right now, is beginning to go in the direction of normalizing abortion. So right now, the Republican Party might not be as bad on the subject of abortion, but eventually they will be. You understand? We're opening up a door. They're already normalizing the discussion. Folks, literally in the time span of 3 days, 3 days, folks, the Republican Party has already opened up the door for abortion under certain terms. It has, in essence, become a very official position of the Republican Party. So, can you support things like that? No, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. I am extraordinarily conflicted as it relates to this very issue. Why? Because I refuse to allow somebody to drag me into having blood on my hands just to facilitate or suffice their untrusting in God attitude in trying to obtain votes. It's just crazy. So I don't know. It's a very, very difficult thing. Randall Mitchell, and I'll address this, by the way. Matter of fact, I'll address it right now. You have a good question. You say if Trump is reelected, do you think he may be the one to usher in the 3.5 years of peace? Undoubtedly not. I don't believe it would be him, and I'll tell you why. Because we know the person that ushers in that 3.5 year period is going to be the Antichrist, and which I'm sure that's what you were implying by your question. But it can't be Trump because I think the Antichrist comes out of Europe, right? He's coming out of Rome. This area, what I would call the revived Roman Empire. Okay, that's nonetheless. But I wanted to address that very quickly. So we're already watching things go down the tubes. I mean, guys, things have gone so south. It's not even funny. And then when you start looking at some of the news items in my intelligence brief, it would blow your mind to see what's going on. I mean, to see some of the things that are actually happening, the stories, you should look at what Israel Katz just went on record of saying. Israel Katz, for those of you that don't know, is somebody that I can actually say is a friend. I've actually interviewed him. He's the foreign minister of Israel. And what he just said is pretty eye-opening. Very eye-opening. And by the way, if you don't know Israel Katz, let me just say this. He doesn't issue empty threats. Okay? He's a very strong man. There's nothing about Israel Katz that's weak. I just want everybody to know that, okay? I know. I interviewed the guy. He's not only smart, but he's extraordinarily strong, and he's not going to back down. And I think Israel needs men like that. I think Bibi is very much the same way. I really do believe that that's the case. I mean, I'm not. There's a lot to say about this. But anyway, okay, let's talk about Matthew chapter 16, because Matthew 16 is going to usher in part of the conversation that we're going to have regarding the rapture, tribulation, all that, and then we will get into a discussion about some of the recent events that are going on that are contributing to the state.
Hey, Shawnee, good to see you.
All right, so let's do this very quickly. Matthew chapter 16. I want to read this. And it says this. It says, the Pharisees also with the Sadducees came and tempting desired him that he should show them a sign from heaven. Now, I want to bring this up because I think this is important. And this is something that we have talked about extensively before. Oh, I got to fix this. Let me see. Make sure that works. Okay, so we have talked about this extensively before. This is not something that should be foreign to us under any stretch of the imagination. We've had these conversations on multiple occasions, right? People look for signs. This is part of what they do in order to seek to validate a specific idea or perspective. This is a very normal thing. We see this type of thing happening a lot.
Shawnee, I couldn't help but notice the link.
Okay, people want signs. That's what they want. It's not a good thing, by the way, to see that. But the reality of it is, it's exactly what is happening. It's the world in which we're living. Okay? Really important to understand that. This is what Jesus says to the Pharisees that want the signs. I love his response. He answered and said unto them, when it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O you hypocrites, You can discern the face of the sky, but can you not discern the signs of the times? He said, wait. Hold on for a second. Hold on. You mean to tell me that you are brilliant enough and astute enough? Way smart. Extraordinarily smart. You are brilliant enough and astute enough to look at the sky and recognize what the weather is going to be like the next day. Yet you're not astute enough to understand what the signs of the times are? It's a pretty brilliant question that Jesus asks. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at length as we get into things tomorrow in the video that I'm releasing tomorrow, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy the video, right? But look at the response that Jesus gives here, or the added statement that he makes after he responded. He says this in verse 4. He says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given it but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them and he departed. Sign of the prophet Jonas. What's he talking about with the sign of the prophet Jonas? We know what the sign is, right? The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. How do we know that? Because Jesus told us what.
So you're right about that, Shawnee. I thought the big thing was the eclipse in Nineveh, but you're right. It wasn't about the eclipse. It was about the 3 days in the fish's belly. You're completely correct there.
That sign would be. He explained the typology to us. It's not hard. He said,
Okay,
as Jonah was in the belly of the fish, right? 3 days and 3 nights, so will the sun.
You are your data. Hackers are committing kidnapping against your digital selves, and they're able to exploit that for a lot of money.
Wow.
It's something that.
Well, the first link, guy.
Very important that we understand. Jesus himself already describes this to us. So when we stop for a minute and we decide that we're going to look at signs in the sky and so on and so forth and use that as our tool to determine the proximity of the coming of Christ, so we got a really big problem on our hands. I think that's very, very important for us to understand. It's critical that we recognize that. I think right now, a lot of the terrible conclusions that people are coming to, the foregone conclusions, come from the fact that there are fundamentals in the scriptures that people continue to forget. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, Diane, that was really bad, that school thing. That made the news here everywhere. That was absolutely disgusting. I'll tell you what, if I was a father of that kid getting taught that, whoever taught him that, if he was a male, I would go and smack him in the mouth. I really mean it. I would go and smack him in the mouth. If he taught my kid that, bestiality and all that, I would really smack him.
By the way, can I just say this? I hear really, really well-meaning people, very wonderful people, by the way, who are making these kinds of assertions, and they're being very bold about their assertions regarding the coming of Christ. Yet what happens is they completely forgot. They lost sight of what the truth actually is because they failed to consider the scriptures in front of them, right? This is like really, really important. And we've got passages all over the place that talk to us about the conditions that must be met in order for certain things to take place.
They're being met.
So we see it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
By the way, Sal Ribeiro, thank you so much for your super chat. You asked about Elon Musk fighting the dictatorship of the leftist Brazilian Supreme Court and Gov. I don't trust any of them. Are you following that, Pastor James? No, actually, believe it or not, that's one story related to Elon that I have not followed. I'm going to have to follow that a little bit. So I can't intelligently comment on it. But nonetheless, all of these stories that are coming out right now are all stories that are giving people pause. But we've seen a lot of discussion going on, right? We talked about the red heifers. Remember we had the conversation about the red heifers and how big of a deal the red heifers were, and how there's so much of a whole world that is surrounding people right now with speculation with respect to what's happening just in that vein, right? But no one wants to stop and read and find out what the scriptures say about these things, about how they're going to happen and what's going to happen and what's going to take place, right? But there's a lot of sensationalizing going on. There's a lot of these news reports that are coming across that are telling us about things that are changing in the land and all of these things that are beginning to happen. We even had officials from Hamas come out and say, the reason why we did on October 7th is what we did is because of the fact that these red heifers are getting ready to be sacrificed. Quite frankly, the reason why they did what they did was because they believe in the destruction of the Israeli state and all Jews. But it is interesting how it would appear as though the Arabs are taking Bible prophecy more seriously than most Christians take it seriously. If you don't believe me, go to Israel and take a look at the Temple Mount from the Mount of Olives. By the way, if you look at the picture behind me, you are seeing the Temple Mount from the perspective of the Mount of Olives. If you look at the golden dome that's right there where my finger is, and you go further down, and then you go over, right, over to your right, my left, you'll see two very interesting things. You'll see, first of all, a cemetery that's right there. And that cemetery is located below what would be understood to be the Eastern Gate. And if you were to look at the Eastern Gate as it is situated right now in the modern city of Jerusalem, on that wall on the east side, you will recognize that that gate is completely sealed up. It was sealed up by the Turkish government. And the reason why, I believe it was the Turkish government, I think it was the old Ottoman Empire. I'm almost certain it was. But it was sealed up because the people that sealed it up believed that Christ would touch his foot down on the Mount of Olives and walk through that area into the East Gate as the Bible says it would. And the reason why they put a cemetery there is because they knew that based on Jewish ceremonial law, the Messiah would never walk through a cemetery. But isn't it funny how they've worked very, 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 very extraordinarily hard to sabotage what the Bible says is going to happen with the Messiah one day? They worked very hard to sabotage that because they believe it. Who's going to go through the trouble of building a massive cemetery and sealing up the gate and going through all that trouble unless they actually believe that these things would actually happen? They know that these things would happen. They're aware of the fact that these things are happening. They're completely astute to these things. Yet Christians are so tied into the sensationalism of all the things that are happening around them that they're not taking the time to study the Word of God and understand it. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love taking the Word of God and using it as my guide to better understand the geopolitics of the region, to make predictions on what I think is going to happen next based on what the scriptures teach me. There are so many aspects of the Word of God that I just absolutely love. And I'm going to tell you this right now, it's exciting to get into the Word and to learn what the Word says about the current moment that we're in and the times that we're in and understand about all of the things that's in front of us. I mean, that kind of stuff to me is it's an incredible hobby. I just absolutely love that stuff. I could eat all day. I just eat that stuff up. I love that stuff. I think that stuff is just awesome. I get a real kick out of it. I think there's a lot of joy in going through the Word and understanding all of these elements.
I don't know what noise you heard from the dog. She's asleep. Look. The doggy's asleep. Moo. Hello, guys.
But that kind of stuff is just fun, and that's why I love talking about the geography of the Bible. Look, all that stuff is just a total blessing to me.
Guys, I will say this: in my state of New South Wales, when the public schools tried to bring in the gender stuff, and when they tried to take it to the extreme, our government stepped in and actually stopped it. They wouldn't allow that to happen. Then 6 months later, the teachers' union has some other scam lined up where they could do it, and the government came in and shut them down again. So we've got the government not letting them get away with this gender stuff.
Just absolutely love that stuff. I think that stuff is fun, right? Because we get into the Word guides us, and when we know the Word, we can make very, very, very sane speculations about the things that are happening because the Word guides us. But there are certain things that we just simply can't do.
Diane, I think BRICS wasn't created to defeat the American dollar. I think BRICS was created because they know the American dollar is going to go down no matter what, so they need an alternative world payment system. I don't think it's directly aimed at the US although it looks like it. I think the US is going to fall on its own. And they know it's, well, they're helping it, of course.
Like, we cannot tell people that the rapture is going to come on this day. We can't tell people that when this happens, that's going to take place, because the reality of it is there's a bigger problem here. By the way, it's funny, James Ancient would mention this. Just post it right up, and I think it's absolutely right. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you, for that day will not come until the man of lawlessness is revealed, and the great falling away occurs first. By the way, I want this is really interesting. I hate the translation, the great falling away, because that's not correctly translated. As a matter of fact, the translation is departed. That's the translation. I don't know if anybody knows that. The actual translation is departed, or the departed. So when we read this, it tells us that the Antichrist cannot even be revealed to the world until Christians have been raptured. That's what it means when it says departing. The falling away is just such a bad translation, by the way. Terrible translation. But that's a whole other story. So Jesus says a wicked and adulterous generation is going to look for the sign. So when we're out there and we're looking, let's see what the stars tell us. Let's see what the eclipse tells us.
I think that's one of Joe Biden's snipers. If you look his record up, I bet he's one of Joe Biden's snipers.
Let's see what the moon tells us. Let's see what all the things in the sky tell us. Okay, look, here's the deal. The Bible gives us a much more accurate picture of those things. Yes. Does God speak through creation? Absolutely. Does God use the sun and the moon and the stars to speak concerning his truth? Absolutely. Can we find the message of the gospel and the consolations? Probably. We'll not even debate that. But it's amazing to me how some people are more familiar with all of the celestial events and all of the things that they think are a sign of something that's to come, but are not nearly as familiar with the scriptures. It's a problem, right? So let's talk about this: the who, what, when, where, and why. Let's go for the low-hanging fruit on the who, what, when, where, and why, the tribulation and the rapture. The low-hanging fruit is the when. That's
why he's Biden's sniper, because Biden doesn't know what he's doing either. So they're a good team.
That's the low-hanging fruit. Let's talk about all the whens that we know about in the Bible, because the Bible gives us a lot of whens.
Amen.
Okay? The first place that we start in the Bible to understand
The new Ego commercial range is better for business. It's simple economics.
understand some of the whens is going to be in Matthew 24 and Daniel chapter 9, right? When we go to Daniel chapter 9, I'm going to read Daniel 9:27, because that gives us probably the best understanding of the when. Okay? Look what it says. Verse 27.
Guys, when I was away for 3 days, I had my tablet with me. So one of the posts I saw, I think it was the FBI or maybe all the alphabet agencies, they were warning of a huge terrorist attack coming, like a very high alert. And that was the day after the eclipse.
Daniel chapter 9. It says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Okay, let me stop for a second, because we learned a bunch of things about the when from Daniel chapter 9. Very obvious. First thing is, the first when is, when does the rapture, or when does the tribulation start? Well, we know that the tribulation starts when the final Antichrist confirms or makes strong the covenant with many for 1 week. So we could be raptured technically, and the tribulation will not start even after the rapture. The tribulation will not, it cannot start until this man, this Antichrist, makes strong this covenant. Now, what is that covenant going to be? I don't know. It could be existing peace treaties that are in play. It could be the existing normalization agreements. I just don't know. But here's the thing. The tribulation cannot start until that happens. And that can't happen until Christians are raptured, because of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, it tells us that the final Antichrist won't even be made known to the world until Christians are actually, until they've departed. So,
okay, I don't know what scripture he came up to come to that conclusion, but none of us are pre-tribbers, are we? We're basically post-tribbers.
understand that, right?
No.
We have to be raptured first in order for the Antichrist to even be revealed.
Why?
But in order for the tribulation to actually start, the Antichrist must strengthen this peace treaty. By the way, if we want to start getting into timelines,
If King Charles is the Antichrist, how do you know he hasn't signed these strength peace treaties? In fact, I'm pretty sure he has.
when we get to the exact 3.5 year mark from the moment that the tribulation actually starts, the Antichrist will set himself up in the temple of humanity.
Shawnee, I saw the US warned Iraq not to fire on Israel, which is a good sign. Our government's thrown Israel under the bus. Our foreign minister has asked for a two-state solution, but our press is still on Israel's side. Our press is still back in Israel, but our lefty government is going as left as you'd expect a lefty government to go, anti-Israel.
Worship. Here's the thing that's really interesting. People tell me all the time, well, James, and I think what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24 regarding nobody knowing the day or the hour has to refer to the rapture, because you're going to know when the second coming is going to be. You have to.
That's where I saw it, Shawnee, redacted.
Know when the second coming is going to be. I said, okay, wait, stop for a second. Why? Why do you have to know when the second coming is going to be? Well, because we got the timeline. By the way, we're still talking about the when here. Well, because we have the timeline. The timeline is going to tell us everything that we need to know. Okay, well, tell me what the timeline is. All right? And the answer that I normally get is correct. Well, the rapture happens. Okay, fine. The tribulation commences when the final Antichrist makes strong the existing treaty. So we know that. Okay, check. Well, from the very moment the final Antichrist makes the treaty strong, then we know we have exactly 7 years, and the second coming will be after that. Okay, but there's a problem here, right? You don't know when that's going to start. Treaties are made on napkins sometimes, in back rooms, a year before it actually gets fully ratified. And oftentimes when it gets ratified, it's a ceremonial thing. They've already ratified it far before the ceremony takes place. So the Antichrist can make strong this existing peace treaty, but he may have done it a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 4 months, a year even, before it got announced to anybody. So he announces it, we make a treaty, they do the paper signing, all of that stuff. Most people are going to assume that the 7 years immediately starts at the very moment he signs that piece of paper. But what we don't know is that we do not know when that actually took place. Because
Diane, funny they're finding all these foreign things in food now, isn't it? They've had years to find this, and now they're about to hit a famine. They decide to announce there's too much lead in it. Yeah, not planned, just a coincidence.
because when the real covenant was strengthened, it could have been a conversation over the phone in a different moment. So you're never going to know. Some of you go, okay, James, I'll give that to you. I'll concede that point to you. You're right. Thank you. I appreciate the concession. But then your immediate place, the place you're going to go to immediately, and I know where you're going to go with this, because many people have gone this. I've gone this way myself. Well, James, we might not be able to pin exactly when the treaty was established. And you're right about that. But we can very easily identify when the final Antichrist comes into the temple and demands to be worshipped. That's going to be an easy one. We can look at the day that he goes into the temple and does that, and we know we got 3.5 years left, and the second coming of Christ will take place. Not so easy. Sorry. Right? Wrong. Won't work that way. Why? Let me tell you why it doesn't work that way. Let me tell you why it makes absolutely no sense. Let me tell you why it will not work that way. It's really simple. Okay? It doesn't work that way because we don't know when the final Antichrist made the decision to do that. He may publicly, with the cameras watching, walk into the temple and demand to be worshipped. But we don't know if he did that privately 3 months prior, or 2 months prior, or a year prior. We still know. So when Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 says nobody's going to know the day or the hour, he is absolutely right. That's a literal assertion. And it's a truthful one. There is no way for anybody to know the day or the hour, even with the timeline that Daniel gives us. And in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, we got a great timeline from him. Even Jesus gives us somewhat of a timeline. When Jesus says that the first sign for the generation that will see the second coming is going to be the abomination that causes desolate. Now, we won't be here when that happens. But he makes it very clear that generation will see the second coming of the Lord. But even then, after he tells us all of this, after he says it will be this generation, he still says nobody will know the day or the hour. Now, if nobody knows the day or the hour of the tribulation or the second coming, I can promise you nobody's going to know the day or the hour of the rapture. So the question of when is a super easy one to answer. And the answer is we don't know. And we know the
Bounces in the house, I'm sneezing.
We don't completely understand because we don't know the commencement points. Of either of the major marks or any of the major marks that are given to us in the Bible. So that's a very important thing to look at. The other thing that we've got to look at, and this one is super critical, like super, super important, right? Is the who. Now, we've talked about this a little bit, right? The who here is going to be certain characters, and there are certain characters to think about because they're very, very, very important to think about, right? There are lots of people. First of all, there's believers and non-believers. Those are part of the who's, right? So we've got to look at the lives of believers. We've got to look at the lives of non-believers. That's a really, really easy one, right? Then we've got to look at some of the main characters that get spoken about in the Bible concerning the events of the end times. Now, we could get really deep into this because we can start talking about the dragon. We can start talking about the false prophet. We can start talking about all kinds of other people. But for the sake of just understanding this from a more bird's eye perspective, the who's that we are going to talk about are three major people groups, okay? The believers, the non-believers, and the Jews. And why do I say the Jews? Okay, I'll tell you why. Because that brings us back to part of the dispensation discussion. Remember, we're talking about who, what, when, where, and why. So where the when and the what intersect is when we start to get into the discussion of the Jews. Why? Okay, let's get into the timeline here. We know this. There's a time right now that we are in currently. Right now, the time period that we're in, a time period that I'll just call the church age, that will soon end. And when it does end, it will end with quite the bang. Because we know the ending of the church age will take place when we are raptured. We know that. So that time period is really, really important. Because when we start getting into the who's of end times, you've got believers and non-believers. Well, who's going to get left behind and who's going to get raptured? That's a really simple one. Let's get into the who's, right? The believers get raptured. The non-believers get left behind. It's that simple. It's not a difficult one to answer. People say, well, if I act naughty or, I'm in a backslidden state and, the rapture takes place, am I going to be left behind? Very likely, no. The Bible makes a very clear stipulation here. There's a clear statement, and that is if you're a believer, you get raptured. If you're not a believer, you don't get raptured. So we've got the believers, we've got the non-believers. And you know who else we have? We have the Jews. They are a separate people group. And the Bible makes that very, very clear.
Thanks, Diane.
The Bible actually tells us this. This is really, really, really important, okay? Really, really critical to get this. The Bible tells us that the period of the tribulation
I sneezed out my nose, not my mouth.
Dedicated to the Jews. Oh yeah, God will be judging the whole world, undoubtedly. But the time period that we're talking about here is for God to deal with the Jews, to restore them, to bring them back to the place that he promised them one day he would. So this should not come as a surprise when we start talking about the who's. Okay? Now let's walk into the what for just one moment, because that's very, very important. We already went over the who's. Okay? Now there's other characters we can bring in. There's God, there's the devil, there's the angels, there's the demons. There's all kinds of other who's that we can bring into play. But the most significant of them are what I would call the reciprocal parties. Now I use that terminology for lots of different reasons. You can take that the completely wrong direction, but most people understand where I'm going when I make that statement. So we're dealing with these who's. We already just got through them, but let's put it into play for a second. Excuse me, got to do this real quick. All right, so we've got the who's. Believers, non-believers, the Jews. So when we go into the what, this is really important, right? When we go into the what, we have to ask a couple of questions. Okay?
Yeah, I only sneeze when Vast is in the chat. That's sort of true.
What's going to be happening? What are we talking about? Really simple. Okay? Right now, we're in the church age. We've talked about this. This goes right back to the when. We're in the church age right now. But eventually, that is going to, at the end of that age, that is going to light up, kick off, start, bring in a new period. And that will commence with the rapture. So the Bible says we get raptured, and then after the rapture, what happens next is that God is dealing with the Jews. By the way, this is really interesting because we see evidence of this absolutely everywhere. When we look at the story in Ezekiel chapter 38, and what's going to happen there, what everybody oftentimes and affectionately refers to as Gog Magog, right? God makes it very, very clear in Ezekiel 49 that he is dealing very specifically with the Jews. That's how I know Ezekiel 38 is going to happen after the rapture. Because God is dealing with the Jews at this point to bring them back to the fullness of all God had promised them to have. By the way, for any of you that says, hey, the Jews, all the stuff with the Jews is, gone from them, and they're not a real people anymore. We don't really pay attention to them. Well, you got a real problem on your hands, because God said, look up. If you see the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky, then you'll know that I will always be there, and my people will always be my people, right? Talking about the Jews. So very interesting. So I want to make myself very, very clear, right? I want to make myself clear that when we start to put together the who, the what, the when, the wheres and the whys, it really begins to make a difference. So let's get into the where for just a moment, okay? Obviously, the whole world is part of this. The whole world is going to be affected by this. But the where is a really simple one, and it's not difficult to bring to play, okay? The where is always going to be the region of Israel. Let me explain what I mean when I say that. When the Bible talks about to the north, or the Bible talks about the east or the west or to the south, it is always to the north, the south, the east, and the west of Israel. So when we talk about where, that's very important. And there are three main settings in the where that we should probably talk about that are really important, when we start talking about end times terminology, right? The first setting is Israel. That's an all-encapsulating term. That's the Temple Mount. That's Jerusalem. That's, all of Israel. Right? And so I get that. But that's one of the wheres. The other where is the world as a whole. The whole world, internationally, everywhere, all geographic.
24 minutes, thanks, Di.
The other where is heaven. What's going on in the throne room of heaven? Why? Because when we read the book of Revelation, we get a very in-depth account of what is actually happening on the throne, or in the throne room in heaven. So we know what's actually going on. It's really, really important to recognize that, okay? So this is all pretty critical stuff. Like, all of this stuff is really, really important that we take a look at. So when we also start looking at the whens, as I mentioned before, we've got a 7-year period that happens after.
Oh, Doug Hagman's lost a daughter as well now. Wow.
rapture, and after that takes place, we know that there's other events that are going to happen, like the millennial reign. That's a whole other thing that we haven't talked about, and we're probably not going to talk about it here because there is so much to talk about in that point in and of itself. But one of the things that you have to do to be able to understand this, now we've gone over parts of Matthew 24, we've gone over Matthew 16, we've gone over Daniel chapter 9. I think what we have to do next is go to Revelation chapter 1, because when you go to Revelation chapter 1, it gives us really, really, really good insight as into the timing. And that's really, really important. Okay? So Revelation chapter 1, let's get into verse 19. And look at the command that he gives John. By the way, this is John that is receiving a vision from the Lord. He's an older man at this point. That's really critical that we recognize that. Okay? He's an older man at this point. He is writing the things that he is seeing. God's giving him a vision of the future, which of course for us is immensely helpful. And I've said this before and I'll say it again because it's really critical, right? You are not going to understand the book of Revelation well until you understand the Old Testament well. Okay? It's very important. Really, really critical. Okay? So watch this. Daniel chapter 1, verse 19. It says, write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. So John, when he writes the book of Revelation down on parchment, paper, whatever you want to call it, very likely he's writing it on parchment, just quiet. But anyway. When he writes this stuff down, he's writing about 3 different time periods.
Wow.
The first time period that we see given to us in Revelation chapter 19 is the things which he has seen. By the way, the things which he has seen, if you were to do a chapter verse correlation with what John is being told in verse 19 and these 3 time periods, it's really simple. I'll make this really easy for you guys, okay?
Be ready to treat them. With Allianz Comprehensive Car Insurance, you can save on your premium by increasing your basic excess. Get your quote today. Allianz.
Mr. Sokolov,
Call me Lolly.
you're looking for someone to write your life story.
Thanks, boss.
The things which thou hast seen is Revelation chapter 1. Revelation chapter 1. Then there's another section. So he says, write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are. That means the current time period. Well, the current time period, represented by John's writings in what he's seeing, is what we would call the church age. It's the age that we're in right now. If you were to map it out in the book of Revelation, then that second item in verse 19 of chapter 1 where it says, and the things which are, can be mapped directly with chapter 2 and chapter 3. We are still, by the way, living in chapter 2 and chapter 3. It's very important we know that. I've been saying it's very important that we know that in a lot of places in this discussion. But it is. It's all very important stuff. So if we were to break it down, you guys can write this down. The things which thou hast seen, Revelation chapter 1. The things which are, Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. And the things which shall be hereafter, that is chapter 4 and on. By the way, it's interesting because there is a phrase in the Greek that is used at the beginning of chapter 4, specifically verse 1, that says after these things, or the tool that's used to talk about after these things, metatauta. That's literally after the church age, after it's all over, after it's done. After the rapture has happened and now we are beginning or commencing the tribulation. Then this is what you're to expect. Okay, so we've touched up a little bit on the who, we've touched up a little bit on the when, we've touched up a little bit on the where, okay? Who, what, when, where, talked about all of that. Now let's get into the why. Because why are all of these things going to happen? Well, first of all, when we just talk about the general overall Goodyear blimp picture of the why, really simple. God is doing this because he's going to restore not only to his people what he intended for them to have in the first place, but for us as believers, he's going to bring us into that place of everlasting peace. So God has to do this in order for us to be able to experience the many promises that he's given us concerning our future. This is just absolutely ridiculous. When people don't look at the real outline for why this is. God makes it very, very clear here. Very clear. Okay. So we have a future to be excited about. We're thrilled about what's coming. God is using all of this to bring us into everlasting peace and joy and happiness. Here's the other why. Okay? He's dealing with Israel. This is why, by the way, the whole idea of replacement theology is so abhorrent, in my opinion. Which, by the way, I know people that believe replacement theology adamantly, who are absolutely brilliant people and who love God with all of their hearts. I just think it's an abhorrent theology. And to those brothers that I love, I would just tell them I strongly disagree. And one of these days, I hope to win them over. If we don't win them over, they'll figure it out when they get raptured. Okay, I'll just make that very clear. But replacement theology is a very abhorrent theology. Why is it abhorrent theology? Because what you're saying, when you believe in replacement theology, is that you say Israel no longer exists. So by saying Israel no longer exists, you are automatically throwing away one of the main purposes for what God promises to do. And that's a very critical thing here, right? Like,
wow, Diane, that Trump one is very telling, isn't it?
One of the main purposes for why God does what he does is to restore the nation of Israel. You can't throw Israel away. So this is part of the why. Very important part of the why. You can't ignore it. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more of this, because when we continue to deal with the why, then we also have another issue to talk about. In the why section, yes. And that is to destroy the wiles of the enemy forever and ever. To literally destroy the works of the devil. To judge him eternally.
Yeah.
And to remove the effect.
He certainly is a snake. He admits he's a snake in that story he tells. You knew I was a snake when I took you in, so why are you surprised I bit you? So yeah, he MAGA is the highest rank in masonry or something like that.
That he will have on mankind. Some people look at that and they go, oh my goodness, James, that's just a lot to say, right? Did you know the why of the tribulation, the rapture, the death, burial of Jesus Christ, and everything else that goes with all of that is given to us in literally a single verse, or a couple of single verses, or a couple of verses? In the book of Daniel, it tells us. Okay, let's read this. Daniel chapter 9, we're going to go to verse 24. And this is a good closing point, because we got through the who, we got through the what, we got through the when, we got through the where. Now we're at the why. Here it is. Ready? Daniel tells us the why. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. To do what? Number 1, to finish the transgression. Number 2, to make an end of sins. Number 3, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Those are 3 reasons. Those are 3 of the whys. By the way, those 3 whys were accomplished with the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. But there's another 3 whys that have not been accomplished yet, all of which are going to be accomplished through the 70th week of Daniel, which is the tribulation. Right? Here it is. Ready? Here are the first 3 whys that have already been fulfilled. Finish the transgression, make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Here are the next 3 whys.
Hey, Jay, good to see you, mate.
To bring in everlasting righteousness, number 1. To seal up the vision of the prophecy, number 2. And number 3, to anoint the most holy. I mean, if you need to know the whys, you have it right there. There it is. There's the whys for the rapture and the tribulation. Right there. You got it. It's very obvious. And what happens when we understand that is we complete the picture of what God's intention and plan was for us as mankind. And it should get us very excited. Because here's the thing, you guys. If you spend time studying the word instead of sensationalizing the events, you begin to understand the events much better because you are allowing the word of God to give you insight into things that you're looking at, instead of allowing the things that you're looking at to form and shape your theology. I hope, guys, that you understand that this is what I try to do with you day in and day out. Like, I hope you understand that this is, in essence, one of the main purposes of this channel. One of the main purposes of this channel is to give you the who, what, when, where, and whys of what God is doing in these last days. And the goal is to get you to take the word of God and to help you be able to better understand what is happening in front of you from day to day, based on what the scriptures tell you. So that when we look at the headlines, we're able to say, okay, that makes sense. Why? Because we have the scriptures guiding us in how we should conclude these matters. It's pretty critical. Let me go over some of these headlines real quick, and then we'll close this up. We'll actually close it out. But this is so interesting. Like, I just look at this and I just think, man, I am mind boggled a little bit by what I'm actually seeing, right? Let me read some of these stories to you. The Federal Bureau of Investigation resumes.
Thanks, Di.
I don't even know if I can use these words in this that's being shared in this briefing. Let me just read the story to you. Okay? House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan said the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, that's the F.
Yeah, I just went and looked, Jay. I did see that eclipse.
ITF and San Francisco field office resuming meetings with tech companies ahead of the 2024 election is deeply troubling after a federal judge found that the Biden administration communicates with social.
Get babies safely on board with Baby Bunting Sale. Save $350 off the InfoSecure Emerge Caprice car seat, $649.
Social media companies were inappropriate. According to Jordan, new communications between the FITF and Meta are subject to a 2023 subpoena, and Meta is required to turn over any communications with the FBI. Why does it matter? Of course it matters. It's a big deal. It matters on a whole bunch of levels. It matters because if indeed we are seeing the Department of Justice, which is under the direction of Joe Biden, being used for purposes that it was never intended to be used for in order to accomplish a nefarious outcome, we're going to have some problem. We're going to run into.
Okay, guys, keep in mind that eclipse the other day, it's widely regarded as America's judgment. We all sort of agree on that, right? So what happens during the eclipse? They were drinking and marrying, just like they did in Noah's day. So they're under this eclipse getting married. That's exactly what God said. It'll be like Noah's day or Lot's day. That's exactly what happened. Getting married under a judgment eclipse. That's in regards to Noah and how all their thoughts were evil, but Noah wasn't. Same principle.
Some real problems in our future, folks. Here's another story. This will, again, here it is.
Okay, I'll just load Paul Begley die and get ready.
Coming again. During an interview with Univision, President Joe Biden said the White House is examining if Biden can issue an executive order that will cut down on asylum claims from illegal immigrants. According to people familiar with the planning, Biden aides are debating the legality and politics of a Trump-like border executive order likely to be announced by the end of April. According to a recent Rasmussen poll, 64% of likely voters believe the border crisis should be called an invasion. Well, why does that matter? Because we're watching a man flip-flop in order to obtain as many votes as possible. And we know what that looks like in this season. crazy. Like when you think about like some of the headlines that are coming across the pipe. Wait until we start getting into some of the international headlines instead of domestic ones, right?
Such as?
This is one that's going to create all kinds of wars between companies, right? The Environmental Protection Agency finalized a new rule on PER and polyfluoroalkyl substance known as forever chemicals in drinking water yesterday. Let me just tell you, with the heavy regulation on how they handle water, it's going to put a lot of businesses to the brink. Let me read this. This is the one that I think is of particular interest to us. And maybe we'll kind of close off on this one, right? All right, here we go. Watch this. This is really interesting. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz. Let me back up. Here's the main title here. U.S. and Israeli officials reported yesterday that they expect a missile and drone attack by Iran to be imminent. Let me show you some of the headlines, some headlines under this story. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz, I mentioned him earlier. He just did something that's pretty powerful. He threatened direct strikes against Iran if Iran conducted attacks from Iranian territory. Meanwhile, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini continued to threaten retaliation for Israel strikes that killed multiple senior Iranian military officials earlier this month. They're talking about the bombing in Damascus. Here's a big one. Ready for this? Brace yourself for this one. This is an interesting story. 3 sons and 3 grandchildren of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh were killed. The typo here, his name, they didn't even put his name here right, but I know he is. Were killed in an Israeli airstrike yesterday. 3 of Haniyeh's sons and grandchildren were reportedly visiting family for the Eid al-Fitr holiday and did not pose a threat, according to relatives.
Yeah, don't pose a threat, yet they're sons of the Hamas leader, but they don't pose any threat to anyone. Good, yeah, that makes sense.
So they're going to celebrate the end of Ramadan. And Israel killed them. Which, by the way, is very interesting. Ismail is now going around telling everybody that his children and grandchildren are martyrs. And is using it to propagandize this, thing that they're doing in their desire to destroy Jewish lives. Here's an interesting one. Russia this morning reiterated that its citizens should avoid travel to the Middle East, specifically to Israel, Lebanon, and the Palestinian territories of Gaza and the West Bank. Why? Because Russia has very specific interests in the security, and that goes right into Ezekiel 38. Okay? This is very interesting. You would think that Iran wants to start a conventional war against Israel, but I don't think that that's the case. I think there's a restraining force that's going to actually keep that from happening. Right? This stuff is amazing, right? We could get into some of the other stories and it would just blow your mind if you saw how quickly things are developing around the world. But do we go to those stories to make our determinations as to what's going to happen in the end times? Absolutely not. Guys, what do? We go to the Word of God. That's what we do. We go to God's Word because God's Word is going to give us every single answer that we need. We're going to learn what to do. Like I said before, we're learning the who, what, when, wheres, and whys of everything through digging deep into the Word of God. And this is very important, guys. Listen to me. This is so critically important that we understand that. If we go to God's Word, everything changes. Everything changes. We need to know His Word. It's really, really critical. All right. What we're going to do is this. I am going to set up the link to get us into locals, so that we can actually do a live broadcast, which I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing, by the way. What we're going to do on that broadcast is we're just going to take questions. So I think that'll be really, really important. Let me see here. I think we've got, I got to find the thumbnail. There it is. If you've got any questions related to this broadcast, we'll be happy to take them. Dale and I will do that together. We'll be available.
Okay, guys, perfect timing because Paul Begley and Mike from around the world's about to start. Perfect timing. Oh, look, hang on. There we go.
That demon, that guy down in Trinidad, that story there.
Oh, look, they're doing that thing to him where they make it small. I wonder why they don't do that on my stream.
Decapitating a 4-year-old girl. I mean, the guy was nice. Nobody seen it coming. Everybody said he was a nice guy. He was good to everybody. Everybody liked him. And all of a sudden, he went demon possessed. Went out straight up demon possessed. How does that happen? Are we going to have a woolly mammoth? Is it coming back? Jurassic Park? All that information that's coming now on that, the cloning and the splicing, and the gene editing, and the genome being redirected, and are they doing it with people too? This is day 777 of the Russia war with Ukraine today. Of that war, it's day 777 of that war, and there's major flash flooding going on right now in Russia and Kazakhstan, right along the border. A dam has broken. The water is gushing, completely out of control. Pray for the folks in that area. It's just not good. There's just so much we've got to talk to Mike around the world about tonight. And so he'll be joining us any second. I want to welcome all of you here tonight. Again, 11 days from Passover. And tonight you can give, start your Passover. Some of you may want to start giving. Some may say, I need a few days. Some may say, I'm planning on sending it on the 22nd. Some of them were saying, I'm ready. I'm praying to God on how much I'm supposed to give. Plus, it's not only that, but what are your
Paul, I'll give you $2,000 on the 32nd of April. I promise you.
Request that's coming with it, okay? That you want Heidi and I to take with us to Israel the next time we go. We don't know when we're going yet. We're still in prayer about that. There's a war going on. But God is also speaking. And so we listen and wait upon the Lord. Mike from the world will join us any moment. Will there be a pole shift? Heidi, I've told him late May sometime we're going to be doing a webinar on the pole shift, Planet X. Pole shift, Planet X. I know we've already done a Planet X before, but Mike's telling us about these meteorites that are coming in. The scientists are talking about a pole shift. They're saying that things are already starting. What does that mean? Does that cause earthquakes? Does that cause volcanoes? Does that cause, coastal displacement or crustal displacement and coastal flooding? Does it flip the earth or just the pole magnetic field? We don't know. Joining us right now from somewhere around the world, it's Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Pastor Paul, God bless you. How do I sound?
Oh, man, you sound great tonight.
Okay, good. We're great.
All right, Mike, we survived the eclipse.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
But I heard the comet didn't. What happened there?
Yeah, it disintegrated. The other, you think they stopped naming things.
Okay.
What is wrong with them naming things? You don't name a comet that. Of all things, that.
Well, do you think because they named it the Devil's Comet that was the reason it's gone? This thing came around every 71 years, Mike.
Now it's gone.
Don't give the devil his due. Be careful. So anyway, good point about it. Why would you name something the devil and you see what happens there?
Terrible. Hey, you know what's something interesting about that eclipse? The line, the shadow of the eclipse, right?
Yeah.
It marked a real weather barrier, and right now are the effects that these storms that are forming went right up that line. Did you notice that?
Yeah, you know what I did, and I thought I don't want that. Maybe that's just a coincidence. But are you saying there's something to this?
Well, I believe that eclipse was set at the dawn of time.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
That's one of the Lord's deals. And if you do what was being discussed.
Diane, we just had a really bad week of floods. The whole world's getting flooded. Every world's getting flooded. And because Mike from around the world said the oceans are heating up and there's more water in the atmosphere, and that's why. And it turns out that seems to be what's happening, isn't it?
In Washington, you would say, "Yep, that's our father."
Okay. Well, what's being discussed in Washington right now?
Well, first of all, you have a lot of you got a lot of hatred towards the Jews, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they can say what they want to say publicly, but some of those guys are vicious behind closed doors. They are extremely vicious, and the Jews. People have their idea of the Jews. God blinded the Jews on purpose, so that the gospel could go all around the world, and He'll open their eyes when He gets ready. But all those who continue to curse them are cursed themselves, and they continue to do that.
Yeah, they do. And one, they either don't know, or two, they know and they don't care, or they don't believe. And there's so much hatred toward the Jewish people. Plus,
they have a hatred,
and
a deep hatred.
It's a deep hatred, and they believed a lot of this propaganda. And I'm not even talking about the lately propaganda. I'm talking about propaganda going back all the way back to Pike, and go back to Hitler and Nazis, and just keep on going back and back and back. There's been a lot of stuff written anti-Semitic and hatred, and it's the devil, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll tell you something. When a person hates, when they have hatred in them, right? They use everything as an excuse to bolster that hatred. But when you have a person who does not have hatred, it doesn't matter what they read. You cannot tempt a person to hate anybody who has no hate in them. And so in this case, you have a lot of people, it's just being drawn out of them. They already hated Israel and the Jews, right? They already hated that. They just needed an excuse to bring that forward. And if you think about a lot of things, that's exactly how it happens. People bolster the hatred that's already exists within people.
Mike, you talking about the Jews in Israel? We have to talk about Iran, I think. I mean,
oh yeah,
Iran, the planned attack, no doubt. Israel, right now, I'm understanding, and you may have more, I'm sure you do, more updated, but the top U.S. commander of CENTCOM, General Kurella, is in Israel. They're meeting 20 stories down in the earth at the major command center. He's probably got the war cabinet in there, along with I do know the defense ministers, Gallant's in there, and maybe Netanyahu. Are they planning with Israel how to put defense strategies together, or are they planning to be proactive ahead of an Iranian strike?
They have to do both. First of all, Iran made a comment they haven't made ever, right? They said, we will directly hit you, right? Yes. They want to directly strike Israel.
Yes.
They've never used that language. Iran has had many threats against Israel, right? Many threats. They called Benjamin Netanyahu a gangster. They said it would be removed. What's different this time is that their entire country has been put on alert.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Iran. People are actually being shuffled around. They know that people went to hardened structures yesterday, and they have there's lots of the U.S. can see everything. So Sally confirms preparations over there. Israel has to do the same. They have to, right? They also have to have an offensive. Iran promised that this would not be an all engulfing war with the surrounding region. In fact, this morning they were talking to Saudi Arabia, they were talking to Turkey, they were talking to all these different. That was this morning, and so something is afoot. But here's what's disturbing.
Okay.
Over here in the USA, now they put out a report because there is somewhat of a gag order. They don't want people in the USA getting upset. There's been a story of a person who has ties to ISIS that was found at the border, right? Now that's just one person out of. We talk about that all the time.
Okay.
But there's a gag order. They can't come out and just openly say anything they want to about that border anymore. Now the reason they did that is because they explained to the people that story. Anybody who reads that story, they're going to read that there was a breakdown between the FBI and the border guards, right?
Okay.
So that was a breakdown, right? The FBI was not communicating with those at the border. This was one incident. Now we know we probably have 400,000 over here in the USA. Okay, at least that's at minimal, and that's probably, you know, in the last, let's say, the last 8 or 9 months. So now you take that number back even further,
Okay.
right? Take it back even further, because they're I believe that there are good people in the news agency who try to get around gag orders, and they're trying to let people know.
Diane, they spend $13 billion and they don't even know if it worked. Are you serious? $13 billion, that would cover the homeless throughout America. That's such a, wow.
Oh, we have a serious problem. They're not going to hit Israel and leave us untouched, right? So there's CENTCOM, for example, CENTCOM. That's intelligence, operations, logistics, all that good stuff. But they're also tied to the vanguard of cyber defense, right? They've been very active, Pastor Paul. So they not only expect an attack on Israel, but they expect interruptions in our infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay, so people over here should also expect bad cyber attacks.
So you're saying
the way it was said, they said bad cyber attacks. They've never said a bad all cyber attacks are bad. Why would this be bad? Why would they use that language?
It means they're going to do something beyond the pale. They've been probing and probing and probing to see what they can get away with. But they must be going to try to do something very serious.
Yeah, unfortunately, with cyber tactics, a person can accumulate all they need and sit on that, you know, for years. And then, you know, push the button, so to speak, when they need to. So they already know that at least 50% of American computers are compromised. They already know that. And what they'll end up doing is using standard computers against the infrastructure, right? They're not going to do it totally externally, which is why Microsoft and Apple and all these guys are working at breakneck speed, getting all the updates. And a lot of people, they don't like getting the updates, right? Their systems are probably 100% compromised. They just won't know it yet. Iran does not want their identification or any of that. They want to use their computer to attack the USA.
Wow. So
a cyber attack, when they break into your computers and change the codes and things like that, that's what it is. A cyber attack is an attack on the net.
Because they want to be clear that they did it. You believe that that's it, that this is time for them. They've been hiding behind the proxies, even in their cyber attacks. They've been hiding, and they've got the Russians helping them. I mean, let's face it, the Russians are pretty good at these attacks.
They're very good.
Yeah. So, is a strategy going on right now for World War III?
You bet. You bet. They know it's coming. They know it cannot be held back. Right now, it was described that in the Middle East, there's already a large-scale war underway. Right? People can't deny that all day, but the truth is, we can talk about lives lost from all countries, equipment, you know, to finance this war. There's already a large-scale war taking place. That is far beyond Israel and Hamas. We have to move, you know, every time something like this happens, that's billions of dollars in fuel that's going to be spent. Right. Aircraft carriers are fueling up. Planes have to be ready for a quick response in theater. This, that, and the other. And that's everybody. Even China is preparing themselves for this one. China has warned their people about this one.
Yeah.
Since
okay, you're thinking about a bigger one. What if they crashed all the electricity places in wherever you are? If they completely destroyed all the electricity power plants, that'd be pretty bad. That'd be a cyber attack worthy.
This Iranian threat. So, you know, China's always on the verge of some sort of issue with their own people. Yeah, this is different.
Well,
and
okay, so I've got some information, and you can verify, or you don't have to.
Okay, guys, I just noticed. Look at the word on Paul's shirt, guys. Keep in mind, Joe Biden and the White House Secretary Speechmaker accidentally said President Obama Look what's on Paul's shirt, guys.
Or maybe you could tell me more. I understand the 6th Fleet is there, pretty well in position. The 5th Fleet is on its way, and even the Dwight D. Eisenhower now is
Obama, ABAMA. We know that's not Obama, but they're tricky with words.
racing toward the region. So you think this is all preventative, and or is there more than this? This is a lot of money to bring this much naval power into the area.
Well, they have a lot there already, right?
Okay.
But they also have to have air coverage. If they attack Iran, is a hardened place, right? Nobody has ever really directly hit Iran and just walked away without wounds. If they actually hit Iran, fastball, here's what's at stake.
Okay.
If they have to retaliate against Iran helping Israel out, right? First of all, if Iran attacks Israel, all Western countries are on the list. They cannot hit Israel, just Israel. They can't do that. They already know they're going to have to overwhelm or hit the USA. That's going to bring us into a regional war. If anybody ever attacks Iran, the Middle East is going to split back to its faith-based cultures, which means all these other nations have already stated that if they ever get into a large regional war, right, they're going to side with the Islamic world against the Western world, period. Yeah. This is what they're really trying to avoid, right? Yeah. And it looks like it's almost unavoidable. If that happens, they know that forces from all over the Middle East will go in and take Israel. Right? That's already been on the table. They found this out with intelligence. So forget about the UN having Jerusalem on the chopping block right now. If this happens, they will take Israel. They will go in there and take it, right? Be a coalition of people. They will just go in there and take it.
You're talking the UN? You mean the UN will rally?
No, not the UN. We're talking about the entire Islamic world.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean, they have it passed. The communication between these countries has been incredibly high, right? Yes. This is why Iran is talking about direct strikes against Israel. Now, they will only say that if they have support of other nations, right?
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia has been talking to Iran. I don't like Saudi Arabia. You guys know that. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, they're all in the bad book.
You don't care much for Jordan either. Yeah, I was going to say.
No, because these guys, when it comes down to it, they're not Christian nations.
Yeah.
Right. And what they're going to do is they're going to side with their culture base. Right. Which is the same as Iran, and Iran will execute every single Christian in that in country when this happens.
Oh.
So it will turn into a bloodbath.
You're saying when this blows sky high, they'll just start executing Christians in Iran?
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
It's a holy war. It's a holy war.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Wow.
See, that's what's at stake, and they know this. This is not some usual situation. This involves everybody. So everybody has to come to the table in this and get some things resolved quick. Because when this, for Iran to have that language, that means they have support. They only use that language when they have other nations supporting them and backing them.
Yeah. Then they feel emboldened then because they got.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Now with this going on.
Okay, Wyo, I didn't know that. You got to admit, with what we know about Paul, it was sort of worth asking about.
And the United States moving all this military Navy support in there. There's a lot of money involved just to maneuver, just to deploy, just to, as you said earlier. But we're looking here at a situation when Iran took out that facility that's supposed to have been a consulate, and they killed the 3 leading generals and 4 officers, major officers of Iran. That was a bold move for them to do that. Is it because they're playing the game already? That was their first chess move, and they're looking to make another one, and they're watching they want a response? I mean, what does this mean? They're fighting Hamas. They got Hezbollah sitting up there with thousands of rockets. Why would you go and smack them? I understand Iran's the one running the war, and there's no question that Iran's doing the war. But this, you had to have known there would be a response. Did they want this?
Benjamin Netanyahu knows of a greater threat dealing with Iran than the world has courage enough to admit. So he's not going to rest until Iran is totally subdued. Iran is the #1 threat to Israel. Everything that's been happening to Israel, right, has been authored by Iran. All all these attacks are proxies of Iran, right? So they pay them to do that. So long as Iran is in power the way it is, Israel will never have peace. Everybody knows that. He can fight Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis all day, and that's not going to do anything. You have to go right for the snake's head, right? And so they're going to do that. That's where Benjamin Netanyahu's mind is. Unfortunately, right? If the world were behind him, he could certainly succeed. Here's the issue, though. It's going to look bad to do that, right? And because it's going to look bad, he's not going to get the international support needed. About that, right? No. Although any other country out there would do the exact same thing if they knew what was at stake. Yeah. But they're not. And we all know how it's going to end up, right? Which is the Bible. The Bible's your anchor and it's my anchor too. And we know how things will end up. So having that in mind, we already know what the end result will be. We already know that. But unfortunately, Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to stop until he protects his people. And believe it or not, if right now, if Israel stopped everything they were doing, right, the Houthis and Hezbollah would have wiped Israel out. They would attempt to wipe them out. The UN would seize Jerusalem, essentially. They would be disarmed and they would be wiped out. And they would no longer be a people. That's what would happen. And people around the world, they know this. Leaders know this. They're trying to sell a different idea to the people, to the populace, so that the populace is behind whatever plan they dream up. Need I remind everybody? Just look at the honesty record of the UN. Look at the honesty record of all this rhetoric that's been happening for years. They haven't accomplished not one thing they said they were going to accomplish, right? Dealing with Israel. Nothing has been accomplished. No. And so they don't have a very good track record concerning that. That's one of the reasons Russia was so upset with the UN, because he knows what they're trying to do to him. Yeah. It's essentially, past false, essentially, you have a force that has grown, right? And this force wants control of resources all over the world, right? So it wants to manage everybody's resources. At the beginning of time, most mankind, all their hunting and gathering skill sets, all that stuff for 50,000 years was to gather food, right? Yes. Rome comes along, they gave the world how to produce, how to distribute, and how to manage food on a large scale. Then we get the industrial age, and we're blessed to go to a grocery store. But what's happening is, with these breakdowns like this, right? Food is becoming scarce in certain places again. Well, that's causing a bit of hostilities. People are nervous about resources. And when they get nervous about resources, it's going to begin to upset the balance of power. This is what they're fighting over now, because they know what happens. If one country goes hungry, it's over. It's done for. That will escalate. And once it escalates, they're going to fight over resources yet again, as they have before. And when that happens, disease breaks out. When that happens, one nation, goes and attacks another for food. Whatever nation wins has to end up feeding the world, and everybody starves in the first place. And so they know what's about to happen. It's this revolving cycle we can't escape from. It just so happens, biblically, we can see what the blueprints are. For these times coming out. So here we are this time, and it's happening quick.
We really are. Mike, also the red heifer. There's 11 days to Passover, and I can tell you they want to sacrifice and burn the ashes of the red heifer between now and Passover. Really, they would love to do it Passover day, but face it, then the Hamas said the reason they attacked Israel on October 7th was these red heifers and the potential that this ceremony was going to happen. Is there any intel or any information you have that on the situation with the red heifers and its relationship to the rest of the Islamic world?
Well, that's a tight-lipped type thing, which has protection within itself, believe it or not. The elements of the temple that they have, right, believe it or not, are being highly protected. And the Mossad is doing a pretty good job at sealing the families because there are families in charge of this.
Yes.
But Pastor, they have selected everything. Everything is selected. Everything is selected. And once they get a property dispute out of the way, right? Because everything has to be pointing in the right direction. Certain lands have to be christened, so to speak, blessed, so to speak. Certain things have to take place. They're ready to do that. I believe they're going to start moving forward with it because they have a type protection they never had before. Nobody can say anything too much about that, but I believe they're going to go forward with it. Whether we're in war or not, whether we have peace or not, they're going to go forward with
the ceremony.
with some of the major things of that temple. They're going to go forward with it. Yeah. They're going to do it. They're not playing. If it's one thing I respect, I highly respect, and people should really understand this. The Jews right now, as a whole, the Jewish community, right? God blinded them for the sake of the Gentiles.
For us, yes.
But you look at the dedication of the Jews, right? Just God blinded them, so that means they can't really acknowledge the Messiah right now. But Pastor, look at their devotion.
Unbelievable.
Look at their steadfastness. Can you imagine who they would be if they identified the Messiah already? My Lord, this world will be totally subdued. Well, just like God said, when their eyes are open again, there's a reestablishment of the kingdom period. But their devotion, even in the face of global opposition, right, of threats, of real death, they still go forward by way of their heritage, by way of the word they have. They honor the word they have. It's an amazing thing. But when you're dealing with the temple, they're going to do in the absence of, of course they have a blindness, but they're going forward with their last instructions given by the Almighty. Right? Any one of us would do the same thing if we could not see. If God blinds you, you can't see certain things you can't accept. And so you have to go forward with what you have. That's precisely what they're going to do. Precise. And God already knows they're going to do it. And it's, there's certain things that have been put in place, and the Lord has his reasons. But they have everything. I mean, everything, including there are some American companies on standby. Now, that just happened this year. That wasn't last year. Yeah. Well, there's some American companies on standby.
So
that's for construction, for security and protection. Yeah, for the temple, big time, just for the temple.
Yeah.
You're talking about a lot of coordination, a lot of money. Here's the deal, though. The equipment has already been shipped overseas.
Wow.
They already did that. They've been doing that since January, I believe. And so, so things really start going that direction. And if the Middle East if they're aware of this, to put it this way, if they are aware of this, then the Middle East being devoted to the Islamic faith is going to do everything they can to stop it.
Yeah. And they're aware of it. That's why I'm telling you, they're aware of it. Wow. All right. Well, let's talk about something. The sun. We did talk about the comet dying, but the sun this morning had another major solar flare. It's an M class 5.4. So we're going to get some CME again. We're going to get more pressure on the Earth. The sun is very volatile, and we've talked about it several times. Is Planet X or this binary system seemingly is causing the sun to really be active? Your thoughts on and Mount Etna is shooting off smoke rings, which is kind of wild. Well, what is your thought about this? These we seem to be seeing we've seen an uptick in the last 2 months of solar flares. M classes, X classes. I mean, we've definitely seen it.
Well, I hope that people have been paying attention because, first of all, we're quickly approaching the days, the weeks, I guess you could say, of some severe problems. For example, the sun, its solar cycle, it was supposed to peak in 2025.
Yes.
It's going to peak in 2024. It's going to do a double peak, actually, and then it's going to go through its pole flip, right?
Whoa!
It's doing all this is happening prematurely, so it's not happening in 2025.
Did you hear me say that that's going to be our webinar? Our webinar for next month, late May, is pole shift. Okay, pole shift / Planet X. So you're saying that the Earth's going to do a pole shift, or are you saying the sun's going to do a pole shift?
The sun is going to do it very. Well, it's going to change it's kind of like changing the polarity of a battery, right? All females, all biology is going to be affected by this, especially women.
Okay.
But here's the problem: we're going through a double peak. 2024 is different than any other cycle we've ever been through. Okay. This is going to be hard to explain, so I'm not going to spend time because people will not understand this, especially those who love science, right? In science, everybody believes that the sun is this big reactor, correct? It's a huge reactor that's outputting, energy, endless energy. That's what everybody believes. But there's something a bit different. And it threw me off too when I first, learned of this, but the sun is actually processing energy it's receiving, and it's been doing that for a long time. In fact, all stars are doing it. Right? They're processing energy, and they distribute that energy to everything else. So the sun receives a type of energy, and then it processes that energy, which is diffused back out to the planets and everything else. And of course, the planets do the same thing. They take the energy from the sun, and they diffuse it to light, into the atmosphere and everything else. The energy that the sun is receiving is soon to double. I mean, double, like too much power, right? Which happens from time, like having a battery that puts out too much voltage.
Yeah.
In some type of circuit, everything is going to heat up. And so the sun is about to go through some changes nobody has ever observed before. Nobody. No scientists know anything. So anyway, that's that subject. So we're certainly going to have some changes. The sunspots are destined to increase. They're going to be up to a count probably. Normally, sunspots are around the 100 mark, right? Imagine 250 sunspots on the sun.
No, that's not good.
So just imagine that. They've already been gravitating towards poles to the center, to the equator of the sun, which is what they normally do. But that many sunspots is outrageous. That will be a telltale sign that some external energy is severely affecting it. Now, they know what that external energy is. They know what it is.
They know exactly what it is.
They know exactly what it is. But it can't be discussed, and the reason why is because it flies in the face of what most people understand. Most people believe in Darwinism.
Yeah.
Most people believe in the Big Bang, right? And every time you hear of a science paper that came forward telling everybody that all these systems are coming close together, they're not separating, they're coming close together. Right? When they run the real numbers, all these galaxies and everything else are not getting further apart. They're coming closer together. They end up, sanitizing those published papers. And so things are a bit different, very different than what most people can comprehend. People are taught for safety reasons. People are taught so they can have open optimism in science, right?
Okay.
Not all, I'm not saying science is a lie. It's just that certain theories are a blatant lie. And they do this so people have a comfort in it, so they'll keep it, and it works. Unfortunately, we've hit a time when all of it's going to start to break down. It's not going to make sense, and people are going to be very confused. As the sun changes, our atmosphere is going to change, right? The water is on the way already. It's on the way already.
What water? What are you serious? What water?
You know what? Back in 2015, I had a double ADL. A lot of people remember I was keeping track of atmospheric potential to hold moisture. I used to talk about that a lot, right?
Okay.
Nobody else was talking about that. And now a lot of people are going to start hearing about that. They're going to start hearing about it because they cannot hide it. They only talk about things when they cannot hide it.
Are you talking about atmospheric rivers? I mean, the moisture in.
Well, that's included. That's included in it. But I named it or coined it a double ADL factor, right? And so the atmosphere right now has potential to hold, I believe, 5.5 times more moisture than it ever has before. So it would hold, say like 219 tons in a cloud, in a cumulonimbus in a storm. You're looking at a factor, well above that now. So it can actually flood an entire city. Storm can flood an entire city. Pennsylvania, I believe tonight they announced a new category of flood warning, right? And it's a catastrophic warning is what it is, which means the rains that are about to fall are about to drop a foot of rain in one area. So
that's if it
that's
does that
a new
in
term.
Pennsylvania, if it does that in the Appalachian Mountains of Pennsylvania, we're going to have flash flooding like they've never seen before.
Well, the potential's there, and the floods are real, right?
And don't forget, guys, when he talks about floods, they happen.
Here's the issue. They've already observed that in Texas. So they saw it in Texas twice, and it was isolated. So this new terminology is dealing with some of the new factors they had to factor in to some of the terms that meteorologists use, because they're going to be, instead of a flood warning or flood watch, people are going to see something else. And what that means is, that whole place, like if somebody is under a catastrophic flood warning, right? What that means is there is no maybe. That means the town is about to be lost, which means federal funding is going to have to be called in for this. That means life is going to be lost too. And so FEMA they get ready, right?
Right.
Pennsylvania has one of those watches for a small town right now, or warning right now.
But we're not getting fires. We've been hit with really bad floods the last 2 weeks. Really bad floods.
Catastrophic. So people have to leave. They have to get out of there. Some people are stranded. Some people right now are stranded because of 8 inches of rain that fell in less than an hour.
But we just come out of summer and we didn't have bad bushfires this year, which is unusual. But it has snowed on snowy mountains already. So the snow season started 2 months early this year.
And so they can't go anywhere. They're stranded. There are problems right now with these storms that are happening. This is only the first round. These storms are going to get a lot worse, a whole lot worse. So Texas, they're not done with the storms. Louisiana, all those places with the storms. The water is on the way. It's on the way, and the atmosphere holds too much water.
Let me ask you. They're saying this is not a El Nino year, and I saw where the Weather Channel last week made a major announcement that this was going to be the worst conditions for hurricanes and cyclones and typhoons in the history of the world. Is it because of? They did say the ocean temperatures are warmer. So is it this water holding up in the atmosphere? Is this what's causing it?
The atmosphere is changing. It's not the same. It's not what it used to be last year. It's not. The ocean temperatures are driving, right? So something is driving the processes of the earth. In turn, the oceans are heating up from underwater volcanic activity, right?
Okay.
They're really hot. That's causing more water to evaporate, right? Because we have atmospheric compression, which means a cumulonimbus does not have to be as high as it used to be to hold that much water. So everything is compressed, and densities are much higher than normal. The atmosphere can hold a whole lot more water, right? So the average storm can drop 5 times more water than it used to. There are microbursts. Texas had 12 microbursts yesterday.
What's a microburst?
Right, 12. A microburst is what pilots hate, right? A microburst is when water, all of a sudden, water comes down on the ground. It's enough water to take the oxygen out of the air. It's almost like somebody dumping a bucket of water on you.
Vast, he's always accurate with his rain prediction and flood predictions, isn't he?
Okay.
The air pressure coming down is extreme, right? You're looking at possibly, I believe they said they have 70-mile-an-hour winds blowing straight down, right? You hardly ever hear that. That's a microburst.
No.
That's a microburst.
Wait, it's not water, it's a microburst of air?
No, it's a water. It's a storm. A microburst is a storm that all of a sudden it releases everything.
78
wind,
miles an
it
hour.
releases wind, it releases hail, it releases rain, and it's all going straight down. This is what pilots hate, because if that ever hits an airport, it's going to do damage. Pilots have to avoid that stuff.
Yeah.
That can bring a plane out of the air. If microburst happens over an aircraft, that aircraft is going straight to the ground, right? They're going to lose altitude, and that's going to be the end of that. And so it just decimates anything below it. Well, they had 12, right? So when you start having these type phenomena, that the atmospheric conditions have altered, and they're not going back to normal. They're getting worse. The water's going to be a lot hotter this year than it was last year, right? So these storms are going to be outrageous.
Okay. So we have atmospheric compression. We have atmospheric rivers. We have way more water. We have straight line winds that are way more faster and stronger. More hail that are a lot bigger. Where the sun is way more active and it's a year ahead of time. And what about the meteors? You've talked about.
We're still on track. We can't avoid that.
Is it for May? Is it this year? Is it going to be starting in May, June, or what?
We'll have this. We're starting to have sprinkles, meaning, right? There is an actual uptick in the reports of people who have damaged property by these things. That's always on the rise. But we're about to hit the point where it will actually cause fires all over the place. So we'll have atmospheric breaches due to the composition of these things, right? But keep this in mind. You're looking at rocks coming inbound to this planet. If we had an incident in space that scared people to pieces, right?
Okay.
It scared the public. The Space Command knew about it, Air Force Command knew about it, but when you have satellites that can potentially collide because they're old,
right?
They just told everybody this could cause a catastrophic effect on the surface of the planet. So what happens when a cluster of rocks comes in? And it's going to hit those satellites. It's going to hit the surface of the Earth, but they're also going to hit the satellites.
Yeah, they will.
Think of what's going to happen. Then that means it's going to look like stars of heaven falling to the earth.
The Bible says that's going to happen. It says it's going to be like a fig tree casting its untimely figs when it's shaken with a mighty wind.
And we put the objects up there.
Yeah, matter of fact, I think I did a video today. Was it today where they announced that a Russian satellite, just barely missed a NASA.
Gosh, it's the only reason I listen to Mike from around the world, because he's pretty accurate.
The satellite, it missed it by 30 feet. You know how close that is? 30 feet. They said had they hit, it would have exploded both of them, and shards of metal, small shards of metal, will come racing onto the earth like bullets at over 48,000 miles an hour, like bullets, pieces of metal, which obviously if they hit somebody, it's going to kill them. It's going to do some, and I'm thinking.
That's right.
So you're saying the meteors that's coming, there's no escaping them. And it's even going to be worse as we got satellites floating around over our heads.
That's right. Because they just told you that if the two satellites collided, what damage they could cause. Right now, they know full well at the altitude those things are. If they would have collided, they would have taken 20 others with them. 20 or 30. It would have been a cascading event, right? So the surface of the Earth would have been in trouble. Now think of a day or two of meteorites coming into our, hitting everything in the atmosphere or anything they can. Some of those satellites are not going to survive. You cannot maneuver those satellites out of the way of those sporadic projectiles, right? You can't do it.
We don't have any technology.
So that's going to be bad. Plus, again, with all the mapping they have done of near-Earth asteroids and everything else, right? If you want to know what that constitutes, then all you have to do is walk outside and put your hand up, right, at arm's length and put one finger up. That finger covers a portion of the sky. That's the near-Earth asteroid. That's everything they have mapped so far, and all the rest is not mapped.
What? No, wait a minute. Are you serious? I mean,
I'm serious.
That's nothing. That's like nothing.
That's nothing. That's all of the money they spent. All of what they're doing. All you have to do is hold your arm up, all the way up, and put your finger up. And what your finger covers is the area of the sky they have mapped. The rest is unmapped. And they're walking around with confidence like nothing can happen.
That's why they're building underground.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble.
This is why
and it's coming.
Yeah. You know, that's why they're building these massive underground complexes.
Because they already know, Pastor Paul. Yeah. They already know there's no way there's just no way they can find everything that's going to kill us. There's no way.
So this is why they're going to prepare to save the human race in their mind. In their mind, they're going to survive the apocalypse by bringing the best, the brightest, the most gifted, the most invited, most connected. We'll get to go down underground, and the rest of us will be up here. See how it shakes out.
That's right.
Well,
and you know what? Everybody keeps mentioning one name. If they mention one name, they have the affiliation wrong. This one name of one president, right? That's his responsibility. He's in charge of the lottery for who goes down there and who does not.
Well,
they think he's doing something else. Oh yeah, they think he's doing nothing on the top side of this planet.
Obama?
Let's put it that way.
Obama?
Nothing on the top side of this planet.
Oh no, the drama.
He does.
Obama,
he has listen.
Obama.
Listen, though, he has nothing to do with anything on the top side of this planet. No. See, here's something people ought to understand right now. You're dealing with well, you might as well call it a breakaway civilization, right?
Well, that's what.
And what's left over? What's left over is on the surface of the earth and everything it entails and everybody it entails. There's a whole different gang, right? That has nothing to do with the economics, nothing to do with anything on the top side of this planet. I'm telling you that right now. It is separate, it is split, and it will never be put back together.
So when Jesus said these words, we're going to Revelation, 6th chapter Revelation, and the Bible says in verse 12, and I beheld when he opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell onto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she's shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it's rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty men, every bondman and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? They're preparing for that day. Am I right? That's the day they're trying to survive. Is that the day?
Oh, absolutely, because the day of his wrath includes everything they're frightened of.
Right.
Everything. But make no mistake. I'll say it again. Those folks broke away some time ago. They broke away. They have nothing to do with what's left. Whatever's on the surface is the leftovers. It's everybody for himself. It is leftovers.
So you're saying already there's massive distribution of food and water and medical supplies and everything.
Leadership.
Everything. That's why we got these
It's already
clowns.
split.
Is that why?
Thank you. Now you'll understand everything a little better, because everything on the top is leftovers. It's leftovers.
I mean, yeah,
everything on top is
Biden and
leftovers.
Harris and Pelosi
Everything
and
on top is
Schumer,
leftovers.
I mean,
Anybody you see up top, they're leftovers. They will not be going down. They're leftovers.
I'm glad I'm going up.
Right.
When they're, you remember when Barack Obama and Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go high." Or no, when they go, it's the opposite. When you go low, we go high. Okay.
Well, see that. Yeah, they don't know about Christians.
No.
All Christians have to remember is this: the Father created this earth, right? Everything that happens in this earth is for our deliverance. All of this is a process for us. So anything that God does is for us. Now, as a creator, they want to be their own creators. So of course they're going to hide, run, go tuck their legs and everything else, but they've split away. Will be liberated. They will not. They already know it. They know it.
Okay, so we see what we got to do is now we're coming down to this. We got to prepare ourselves for such a time as this. No doubt about that. This is day 777 of the war with Russia and Ukraine. Is there any end in sight in this?
I fear not.
Oh, no end.
I don't think so. Unless Ukraine gives up.
And they might, if everybody quits funding them, that might be when they say.
Well, they're trying to make them give up. That's part of the plan to make them give up, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do now. But either way, they're leftovers too. They're leftovers. It's going to be, Pastor. You know what happens? What will eventually happen is a type of lawlessness is coming. So if anybody prepares for anything, in addition with some of the atmospheric conditions, right? Get ready for lawlessness. I can tell you right now, all the power is going back to the states, and states will dictate their own destiny. And that's where we're getting back. We're going to see a breakdown of most of what was tightly held together. They have washed their hands of it, and everything on the surface is leftovers. It is whatever left behind. It's what we're seeing. And that's why now you can interpret that picture a different way. You can see exactly what's happening when you think in those terms.
Absolutely, and I do. And now I see everything in a different light, a different perspective. We kind of knew, but it's becoming more evident that there's nobody really cares about the border, or nobody cares about the Constitution. You're starting to see that. I mean, you see like the Supreme Court makes a ruling, and the president just says, "I'm going to do this anyway." I don't. It's like the Constitution don't matter, borders don't matter. So we're moving a whole lot further down the line. Mike, there was a guy, and I want to bring this up, in Trinidad. This guy was fine. Everybody said he was fine. He was living with this woman for 4 years. She had a little girl that was 4 years old. It wasn't his child. Neighbors said he was a great guy. Everybody said he's a really good guy. All of a sudden, he just snapped, or something went wrong. We don't know. But his girlfriend said that he become violent. His different voices started coming out of him, different personalities and voices with total different voices. And then he got violent, so she ran out of the house to run to the neighbors to call the police. He was destroying stuff in the house, and when the police got there, it was too late. She left the little girl behind.
No way.
The little girl was beheaded.
First of many more cases.
Is that going to?
That's going to happen all over the world.
Can you tell me why? I mean,
that's going to happen everywhere it can happen, because people, Pastor Paul, people have made a grave mistake. Now, for number one, a lot of people have played around with salvation, right?
Yeah.
They have entertained forces they don't understand. They've been pious in whatever they pursued in life, and they think that comes without consequences. This complacency that humanity has with evil, with anger, with killings, right? This is embedded into most culture. Video games are not passive. Video games are immersive. And this is exactly the part of the personality a person has. But what a person has done was they have totally swept themselves of all beliefs. Of all what people believe in now is everything they believe in at the moment. They have no foundational belief of anything. They're swept clean, and whatever was kept back for a long time. Humanity has invited them back in again. Oh, this alien topic, Pastor Paul.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of people going out there saying, I want to see the lights, and they're interested in aliens, what they have truly done was open themselves up, and they're saying, come into me. Let me commune with you.
No.
Because when you have a desire to see the unknown, right? When it's not named, anything can come back, and we know it's not going to be good. And so people have opened themselves up to totally be taken over on the inside.
People were doing that during the eclipse. They were.
Well, you know, it's good that everybody saw those folks out there having this emotional response.
Right.
And you know what? That was so deeply concerning and sad. And it's because everybody had an idea about the eclipse, right? Which is why the Father's word is so important to me. Well, I told you I didn't feel anything about the eclipse at all, but these people worshipped. They had an emotional connection to something bigger than they were, and they were willing to accept anything at that moment. Well, again,
Rich,
everybody's looking for a portal.
Well, thank you, Rich, for your faithfulness. Thank you, Rich. Go ahead, Mike.
Everybody's looking for a portal or a gate, right?
Yeah.
Well, newsflash, a human being is a portal. A human being is a gate. All one has to do is open themselves up to what they cannot see in the spirit realm. And whatever wants to come will come and cohabitate with that person. A lot of people have done this. They have marked themselves for possession. They mark themselves for possession. They're complicit with the anger and the evil that they have inside them. There are more people right now who have bad attitudes, road rage. Do you think that's not normal?
That's
to have
not
road rage?
normal. You're right.
The world tells people, hey, you'll get upset and aggravated. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Because if you're a Christian, you believe in Christ, you are to have the peace of Christ.
Yes.
Christ said, I'll leave my peace with you. But people are being complicit to live without peace.
Yes.
They're irritated, annoyed, depressed. They deal with all these things. The Lord had asked us to be healed. That's something we have to accept.
And Vas, isn't one of the trumpets or seals, isn't one of them saying that the Euphrates River dries up? I'm not sure if it's the rat bowls, the trumpets, or the seals, but one of them says the Euphrates River dries up. It's dried up now. It's already dry. So that's already been fulfilled. So whatever it is, a trump, a seal, it's not a bowl of rats because they come at the end, but if it's a trump or a seal, we're already into the last phase, that far into it, that the seals are actually being released.
Except he's already put it in place. But you have a lot of people who have become complicit to live in a type of darkness with negativity, with attitudes and everything else. That is unnatural to love itself.
It really is unnatural. It's
unnatural.
It's against nature. It's against God's. People. And don't you see how much stuff though is going against nature, going against God's laws? I mean,
well,
it's not even. It's insane. I could go on and on and on. We gotta be careful about how to say it here on this channel, but there's so much going in the opposite direction than God intended. You wouldn't believe it.
God is love, right?
Right.
That's what the Bible says. God is love. For some reason, people think love is weak. Well, I'll tell you something. It is so easy to strike back at a person. When a person does something to you, it's easy to strike back. It's one of the hardest things in the world to take that strike and still love that person, having an understanding that that person's compromised. That's very difficult. But the power of love is this, where a person who would hit another person, right? If they see a person in danger, they're not going to run and go get that person. A person full of love will cast everything aside. They will commit themselves and say, I'm going to go help this person out. And nothing will stop me. Mothers know this when they get that child in the middle of the night, right? After they had the flu or something. Nothing can stop that mother from getting that child. That is the strength and the resolve of love itself. Yeah. And instead of people utilizing this power of anger or of hatred to do anything, why won't they use the resolve of love to do it? See, that's unfamiliar to them, right?
Yeah.
Because when they use the resolve of love, then they're willing to sacrifice. They will accomplish anything they set their hands to do if they can put themselves in the place God said, hey, you show up here. Because God placed that path of love for us. Yeah. But for some reason, people believe the lie of the world saying love is weak.
It's
Love is not weak.
Love's the most
Love is-
powerful force
love is
on the
the-
earth.
Love was what fueled Christ to stay on the cross. Everybody else would have ran off.
Absolutely.
Love fuels us. It certainly fueled Peter. You know, how can you be crucified and then you say, oops, hang me upside down. You know, I know my arm is hanging off. I know I'm burnt to death and beat.
Okay, Diane, reading what you just posted, it's the sixth trumpet. So the Euphrates River dries up with the sixth trumpet. Listen to these trumpet sounds we've heard around the world the last 2 or 3 years. You see a city and you can hear something like a car horn in the air non-stop. It's like trumpets being blown.
But hang me upside down. I'm dishonoring my Lord. Nobody does that.
No.
What we have to overcome. Nobody does that. That takes the resolve.
You got to be 100% sold out to Jesus.
That's right.
You know for sure.
That's right.
You know that you know that you know that you know.
That's right.
There is no plan B.
That's
I
right.
can tell you, my life, I'm living it for Jesus. There is no plan B.
No backup plan.
When you got the best,
I don't
forget
have
the
one
rest.
either.
You know, Mike, when you got the best, forget the rest. There is no backup plan.
That's right.
And if you have a backup plan, you don't have the man. You can't have a backup plan and have the man Jesus Christ. You got to trust him all the way, right?
That's right. A lot of these people, Pascal, they haven't. They've been operating under a different power, and they have been loving it. And that power is just coming to get its property. And that's demonic possession all over the world. I believe that's the first of many cases we're going to see. We're going to see that. But not one believer is going to be touched.
Amen.
Because not one demon has power over the weakest Christian.
Amen. Amen to that. Oh, one last thing before you go. The woolly mammoth is coming back. Did you see this where they're taking the DNA of the woolly mammoth and they're putting it with an elephant? And a Tasmanian tiger. What's going to happen?
Article 2008, Alaska woolly mammoth, right? Tusks, dated to only be 50 years old.
Huh?
In other words, these guys, they're doing things they have no business doing.
It's been going on.
You're going to read about this article. You ready? You're going to read about. Everybody's going to hear about something in China.
Okay, I'm ready.
China has developed some sort of a thing, right? That's a dragon about the size of a big lion. It's real. Okay, wow. It has a birdish type head. I don't know if it flies, but it has wings. People are going to hear about that.
Wings.
It is black, white. It's black, white, and a tannish color, and it's real. It's not fake. Also, they didn't stop there, because China discovered a place that was totally isolated from everything, kind of like Madagascar was before human beings got there, right? And the diversity of life that was there. Where China has uncovered a cavern system, right? Kind of like in Mexico, right? That has trees, right? The one in Mexico has 100-foot tall trees, right?
What?
This one has grass that's bigger than you are, bigger than I am. Can you imagine a blade of grass bigger than you and me? That's humongous.
Oh, that's insane.
And huge bugs, huge everything is in China.
That sounds like the pre-flood animals and trees.
It takes some equipment to get down in there, because the hole to access it, right, is quite tiny. And they found this place by rescuing one of their own workers on a drill site or something out of a movie. But it's a real place, and people are going to know about that. And that will further bolster China on the world stage as being this place of wonder.
He just did vast, as you could tell.
People look at China as a place of wonder. No, they didn't.
It's God's place, right?
Yeah, they didn't create it. They just found it. And according to them, and according to some folks who are over here in prestige positions, there are extinct life forms down there. You know, nothing from outer space. Everything that used to live here, but some big specimens down there. Huge specimens. And the only word they had was, we got it totally wrong. We just got it totally wrong. Because everything down there, they said, it just kept continuing. But what we think things look like, we got that totally wrong. That's what the word came out. But that'll be that the whole world will know about that. The whole world will know.
Bugs as big as me?
Well, just big bugs, big blades of grass
as big as
we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you imagine a 7.5 foot blade of grass is 7.5 feet tall, right? And about 2.5 feet wide. Right? That's pretty big for a blade of grass, for a type of grass.
So we're going to hear about this, right? I mean, you're saying this is going
to... Oh, the whole world's going to hear about it. Yeah. The whole world's going to hear about it. Yeah. They're going to hear about it.
Can't wait. Sounds fascinating.
This is enough tonight. I can't deal with them. I can't deal with no more, Mike. I just can't. What else you want to tell me? What we're going to talk about next week? Is there any something between now and
the weather and war?
Weather and war.
Yeah, we'll probably have a couple of CMEs. I mean, expect solar activity to go on another. It won't be on a hiatus. We're going to have some more active pulses come through, and so the sun will certainly react.
Weather, war, and CMEs headed our way. Mike, appreciate you coming on tonight. It's really great information. It gives us a lot to pray about. It also is a lot of confirmation from the Bible we learned here tonight. So praying for of course, the peace of Jerusalem. We're praying that, somehow, some way, war would end. But look, at the end of the day, it's coming that we need Jesus, don't we?
It is. Oh, Pastor, I forgot something. One last thing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I'm talking about the water event, right?
Yes.
The bugs come out in May or early June, right? We already have 2 collapses in the South and North Pole. So those collapses are going to translate into water problems around May, June, and July.
So
we'll keep that.
Next week we're going to talk about weather, war,
yeah,
and
we'll
water.
talk about that more. We'll talk about that water more because it's almost like everything is melting much faster than you remember. I told you about that the one ice sheet that was held up by a very small layer of ice.
Yes.
It is being held up now, right? It's almost totally collapsed. It's floating right now. It's floating, right?
Okay, they talked about this iceberg on our news. It's twice the size of London.
But that's only going to last for another month and a half. And that's the end of that. It's broken off. It's starting to break off already.
It's a huge
ice sheet. It's already starting. Oh, yeah. It's already starting. So that's happened. I expect more breaks have happened. And that, it is once it breaks, it's going to slide down. It will shift.
Okay, Heidi's got something she's brought me right now. She says, Paul, here's a massive water disturbance deep in the southern hemisphere of Earth. Do you know about that?
Yeah, well, we'll hit that up. We'll talk about more of that this week. They're going to try and explain that, right?
Yeah, yeah. All right, so next week we're going to talk about weather, water, and war.
Did they say it was causing a 40-foot wave? 40-foot waves are reported.
We just got this info. We haven't watched the video on the explanation, so I have to do that. Don't know.
We have
40-foot wave. Wait a minute. Where?
I'm just saying that. Are they saying anything about a 40-foot wave?
No.
Not what I see right there. I'd have to go through it and see. No, I don't know.
So Mike knows something about a 40-foot wave, obviously.
We'll talk about it next week. Weather, water, and war, and then throw the sun in there, and we'll see what shakes out. 80-foot wave, someone just said. Someone said 80-foot wave. 80 foot. You're saying 40 feet. Okay.
40. Yeah, 40 and very wide, probably about the length of a continent. 40-foot wave.
That's a tsunami.
That's what I'm looking for.
That's beyond.
80-foot would be more compact, so that's not the break I'm looking for.
Okay. So you're looking for the break of the ice sheet.
Yeah. 40-foot is something totally different. 40-foot and very expansive is something totally different. In this case, the height of it, if it's 85 or above, that means it's much too much too localized. We're not talking about something localized. We're talking about something with global coverage. And so, 40-foot wave, people can look forward to that one coming.
We'll talk next week. Mike, thank you for coming on and being with us tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Pass ball.
And the way that Triceratops, it wasn't throwing the guys around. It's stomping around and shaking its head, but it's like the weight of the body wasn't worrying the people with the ropes holding it. Okay, guys, this is him out. I'll finish off with prophecy from Stan, Vast's favorite guy. But let's finish this first.
God bless you.
God bless
it's always an honor.
God bless
All right.
Mike. The honor's mine.
Okay, so there you go.
Welcome to Jelna. Let's go see how Jelna pot set yogi's made. Fresh milk's poured into our special pots. Then, with a little time and a great deal of care, we create uniquely thick and delicious Jelna pot set yogurt.
Experience Vietnam. 11 days, just $2,399, including flights with Holiday Max. Join us as we explore ancient temples, serene riverside villages, colorful floating markets, and lantern-lit wonderlands. Immerse yourself in the very best of Vietnam, from Hanoi's French elegance to Saigon's vibrant energy. Cruise Ha Long Bay. Bear witness to Hoi An's ancient charm and the captivating Mekong River. Experience all of this and more on the 11-day small group Classic Vietnam journey. Holiday Max has taken...
Bloody remote.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Today I'm going to read Dimitri Duduman's testimony. It's been a long time since I've read it. There are a lot of new listeners that have probably never heard this. Even if you've heard it, I recommend you continue to listen because he's the guy that was told by the angel Gabriel that America is going to be attacked by Russia. And that's a very difficult message to receive, but I think once you hear his testimony, which is why I'm reading it today, I think you'll agree he heard from God.
No warnings of it die. Perhaps, yeah, that's on purpose, like the Maui fires.
Okay, so let's get started. So Dimitri Duduman says, I was born in a Christian family. My father was a pastor of the Pentecostal church. And at the age of 17, I ran away from home. I went to Marine school. I stayed there for about 4.5 years. By the way, I typed this up because I've heard him give his testimony many times. I think, let's see, it would have been 1987. I typed this up. Which, by the way, when he wrote his book, he asked me for a copy of it. He didn't use all of it, but he used a lot of it in his book. Anyway, he said, I became a Marine officer. They gave me about 80 new recruits and put me out of the Black Sea. The communist government told me to search the ships coming in from foreign countries, and if I found any Bibles, to confiscate them and arrest the missionaries. They said, Dimitri, if you'll do this, we'll advance you.
Okay, I've shown it too many times, guys.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is straight out of Matthew 24. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Now, we have three people that say that we're in the tribulation. Well, if we're in tribulation, then we should be seeing wars and rumors of wars coming forth. Now, the rest of the scripture, Matthew 24, says, but the end is not yet. Well, I believe we've been seeing wars since World War I, World War II, but now we're on the precipice of much, much more. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel. It helps the word to go out. And also, we encourage you to join Prophecy Club, $9.90 a month or more, by clicking the QR code down at the bottom. And that helps take away the ups and the downs from Prophecy Club. That way we know we've got your support all the time. Anyway, now I covered this the other day, but it relates to our topic today. As you know, the top Democrat Schumer got on and actually openly called for the replacement of Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. by saying we need new elections. Okay, so that's stabbing our best friend Israel in the back. Remember, Genesis 12:3 says, I will bless them that bless you, and I'll curse them that curse you. So we are cursing Israel. So that means we're going to get cursed. And there's more. Covered this the other day too, but it also relates. U.S. will not interfere if Iran attacks Israel. What? What? Okay, what that is doing is giving permission to Iran to attack Israel. So what is that doing for America? In God's eyes, that's saying, okay, you're asking me to give permission to other nations to attack you, America, because so goes Israel, so goes America. So this is a problem. And I've got more to cover here. Iran's naval commander threatens Israel and talks of a regional war. Iran is getting ready to attack Israel. One of Iran's top naval commanders, he sketched out how Iran wants to become a naval and regional military power and how it plans to confront Israel on various fronts. Israel's pro-government Fars news characterized the new policy as calling for a coalition of Muslim armies against the Zionist regime. Isn't that the third beast, where we have four wings of a fowl, four heads upon the leopard being Islam or Muslim? Isn't that saying that he's calling for Muslim nations to go against Israel? Well, here's the problem. The Bible says that there will always be an Israel. Israel has an everlasting covenant. America or Iran does not have an everlasting covenant. God is going to protect Israel, and it'd be in best interest of America to also protect Israel. The article goes on to say, Iran became an exporter of weapons, including missiles, boats, radars, and that the U.S. embargo on Iran has not succeeded. Well, of course not, since we're sending plane loads of U.S. dollars and who knows what else over to Iran. Okay, so you could say that America is not only supporting, but we are financing the war machine of Iran to attack us, other people, and of course, Israel. Our good presidents do this. He further noted that Israel has not achieved its goals in Gaza after 6 months of war. Yeah, that's right, because basically America and the rest of the world won't let them do it. And again, Israel needs to call me, and I would say, look, they're on your property, tell them to get off. That's putting it nicely. This is a key point for Iran, which should watch the war carefully, particularly Israel's messaging on its own goals. Israel said Hamas would be defeated. That's right, it did say it. And if the rest of the nations would be in support of Israel, it would. Hamas today is stronger than ever before and has suffered the least losses. I don't think that's true. He goes on to say the world turned against the Zionists, a sign that the world was growing more critical of the war. Well, of course, at least the news is critical of the war, is critical of Israel, because the news is all controlled by the folks at Exodus 32:4, which I can't say that word. Isn't that strange? We've got words that we cannot say or they will take us off. They will take our channel down. I do not have freedom of speech on the channels. I can't even say the words. Anyway, this is a picture of some of the weapons that Iran is displaying, saying, we'll fire them at Israel. It says Iran is particularly paying attention to how the IDF is performing. Israel claims to have a strong army with advanced weapons, but to this day, the Zionists have not been victorious, neither in the military nor political fields, nor in the social sphere. Iran says naval drills are messages of peace. Yes, that's right, because peace to them is to kill everybody that does not worship Allah. That's their peace. That's called jihad. Jihad is when your ankles are tied, your hands are tied behind you, and you're on your knees, and there's a big, sharp, long sword called a scimitar that is held over your head, and you say, do you believe in Muhammad, or excuse me, Allah and his prophet Muhammad? And if you don't say yes, your head is lopped off. That's jihad. The FBI says China is the defining threat of our generation, with hackers ready to wreak havoc in the U.S. Okay, this is the FBI, and I want to think that they're really good guys, but
no, look it.
I can't tell you of my opinion. If I tell you that,
Good night,
I'll
Lynn.
take it
I'm
off.
out after this as
I
well,
know that.
guys.
Look, I hear. I just was finished talking, which, by the way, I guess I should say something there. So I just finished giving 2 talks at the Warren the Watchman conference. And I got the chance to talk to other watchmen and other ministers, and they began telling me how they have been deleted, how we don't have free speech. Now, to tell you how it went, I thought it went real well, and I think the comments from the people from my talk say it went real well. I made lots of other friends with the ministries and also the people there. And the thing that shocked me the most is how many people there had heard of Prophecy Club, and they were all shocked to hear that this is the first time that I had been invited to speak at a prophecy conference. Well, why don't they want to have Stan come and talk at the prophecy conference? A, he's too direct. Okay, so we want you to tell us smooth things, things that we want to hear. 2, he's not pre-trib. And of course, that eliminates anybody because pre-tribbers, I love my pre-trib brothers and sisters, but they don't want to hear anything else but pre-trib. And so I don't get invited. 3, I also carried Dimitri Duduman's message, and of course, that's not positive. We want to hold a conference where we feel good, and Stan wouldn't make us feel good. Now, maybe God approves, but they don't approve. Anyway, let's go on. So the FBI says China is defining a threat of our generation, the defining threat, with hackers ready to wreak havoc in the U.S. The FBI has warned China that the defining threat of our generation, with hackers ready to go and wreak havoc in the U.S., is China. He says China is more complex and sophisticated than ever, is becoming more aggressive in their efforts to steal our secrets. It is the defining threat of our generation. Okay, well, he hasn't heard of Dimitri Duduman. Russia is the Chinese defining threat because remember that Dmitry was told the fall of America was stopped with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. Some of the people would start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 of the countries you couldn't remember will attack and destroy America in 1 hour. Then God will raise up China and Japan and many of the nations. So China actually, in the next war, is going to be on our side. I don't think it's that China's a bunch of good guys, but one of the prophecies says that God is going to cause a great revival.
Last, I don't reckon we get rescued until Armageddon. The way I've read the Bible without any input from anyone else, I come to this conclusion before I saw what other people said, and I don't think we're rescued until on the brink of defeat at Armageddon. And that's when Christ comes back and rescues us. That's what I think. So completely post-trib here.
To hit in China, and a lot of the bad guys can be kicked out. Now, I don't know that that's true. As a matter of fact, I think I only have one prophecy on that. But let's go on. So China's engaging in traditional espionage and economic espionage, election interference, and transnational repression, often working in tandem. Oh, well, we know that's true. They're also recruiting human sources to target our business using insiders to steal the same kinds of innovation and data that trackers are targeting. In corporate deception, hiding Beijing's hand in transactions, joint ventures, and investments, all with the same goal. They're exporting the repression efforts and human rights abuses. Well, all of this is happening because we turned our back on Jesus. You know, when I was going to school, I can remember in the 2nd grade, every morning the teacher would have us stand and cite the Pledge of Allegiance. I remember one time that they had the, what do you call it, principal, call over the loudspeaker. Apparently you can do that to each room, and ask the teacher to come to the office. And when he said her name, she sprang out of the chair, turned, clicked her heels together and looked up at the speaker in the room and said, "Yes, sir." She showed respect to the principal. And in those days, we were mostly Christian. And in those days, we read our Bible and we prayed in schools. But in 1963, in case you don't know the story, our Supreme Court said that we cannot pray in schools anymore because it was against our Constitution, which Christians had written. Which what we should have done is immediately removed the Supreme Court justices that said that. And then we should have instituted that in law that the King James Bible should be read in the schoolrooms and prayed in all schoolrooms every day. Had we done that one thing, America would not be in the problem that it's in today. On to the next article. So, Israel is preparing to strike Iranian nuclear facilities amid tense wait for revenge attacks soaring World War III fears. Okay, so we know that the Bible says that there's going to be a lot of wars, especially when the first 3 seals are opened, and we have several people that say that they are. The article says Israel is preparing to strike Iranian nuclear plants if faced with a revenge attack for the death of the top Tehran commander last week. Netanyahu's war cabinet has been locked in crunch meetings over fears that Iran will launch an assault as Middle East tensions threaten to boil over into an all-out war. Okay, so Stan, what's your opinion? Well, my opinion is King James Bible. King James Bible says that we should support Israel no matter what. I will bless them that bless you, and I'll curse them that curse you. My Bible says that Israel has an everlasting covenant. America does not have, no other nation has an everlasting covenant. Means if we be smart, we would be supporting Israel instead of sending plane loads of money over to Iran that is then turned and used against us and Israel. You know, I don't understand why the president that did that is not pulled up on traitor charges. I don't know. That ought to be breaking some law when you're aiding your enemy with plane loads of money. Israel will respond to any attacks by striking Iran's nuclear targets directly. Israeli forces have been conducting secret Air Force drills in preparation for the dangerous escalation. Iran is home to several nuclear sites, including power plants, uranium mines, and research reactors. A targeted attack against one of them could mark an unprecedented escalation in the melting pot of Middle East conflict. Tehran's embassy in Syrian capital Damascus was destroyed in a suspected Israeli strike last Monday, as we know. General Mohammad Reza Zahidi died alongside 6 senior members of Iran's twisted terrorist army, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Next article. Former Defense Secretary predicts Iran will strike at Israel. Well, why not? America says we won't do anything if you strike Israel, and America has sent Iran plane loads of money. So why not? Since that's what their Bible, that's what their book says they should do. They should kill everyone that does not worship Allah. That's what their book says. Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper on Friday said, Iran is likely to retaliate against Israel for a recent missile strike that hit Iran's consulate in Damascus, Syria. We've heard about that. But on a limited scale, to avoid wide-scale war in the Middle East, they're going to feel the need to uphold their dignity. So here's another one saying Iran's probably going to attack Israel. Let me just tell you, it won't be good. It won't be good if Iran does that. Because unlike us, Israel fights back. They have to. Here comes World War III. Tony Blinken announces Ukraine will be joining NATO. Okay, it doesn't get much worse than this. You talk about giving yourself a black eye. This is like walking up.
Okay, Vast. I have a bit of a question with Peter getting stoned. I'm pretty sure Paul was behind Peter getting stoned, wasn't he? So he was the guy who called for Stephen to get stoned. Yet the Pharisees couldn't sentence Jesus to death because they didn't have the power to sentence people to death. So how did Paul sentence Stephen to death when the Pharisees couldn't even sentence Jesus to death? They had to go through the Romans. So how did Paul have the authority to kill Stephen? I completely believed it happened But there's something missing here I don't think we know.
To the door, opening the door real hard right into your face. That's what we're doing. So here comes World War III. Tony Blinken announces Ukraine is going to be joining NATO, pushing U.S. closer to nuclear war with Russia. That's right, it is. And so one of these days, Russia is going to be able to say, wait a minute, the U.S. attacked us first. But of course, they're not going to talk.
Thank you,
They're not
Voss.
going to threaten more than they already have. They're just going to take us out in 1 hour. So says Revelation 18. So great riches have come to naught in 1 hour. So great riches come to. She saith in her heart, I said a queen, and I'm no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall the plagues come in 1 day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, and every bondman, every free man, hid themselves in the dens of the rocks. Yes, I did memorize the book of Revelation. The point is, we're shooting our own self in the foot. We're walking up the door and opening it real hard right back into our face. We're asking Russia to attack us. Secretary of State Tony Blinken says that Ukraine will be joining NATO. Stupid. This article is actually very good, very close. It says the Ukraine is a corrupt, true, non-democratic, true, authoritarian republic known as the most corrupt country in Europe. That's right. This is where I can't say the word again. All these guys I talked to at this conference say, you say that word, they'll take, because that's who they really worship. It's not the deep state. It's not the Khazarian mafia. It's these people. Again, if you'll go read Exodus 32:4, it will tell you it's the molten calf. But you got to look up the name of the molten calf to know who it is. These are the same people that own and control the world. And the most country in the world is that area, Ukraine. And the story that I read years ago, centuries ago, they were so bad, they were so evil that the countries around them went to them and said, look, you got to choose a God. You can choose Allah, you can choose Jesus, or you can choose to be Jewish or the Jewish religion. And they chose Jewish. And so a lot of them decided that they were going to be Jews. They went to the Jews and said, look, can we intermarry? And the Jews said, no, can't intermarry with us. So they just started calling themselves Jews. They changed their name, a lot of them, to Jews. But these are the bad people. These are the bad people that call them, even Revelation says that they call themselves Jews, and they're not, but they are the synagogue of Satan. It says it 2 times. So these are people that are extremely evil, but they call themselves Jews, but they're not Jews. And they headquarter out of Ukraine. So let's go to the next part here. Under Article 5, this means that an attack on Ukraine will be considered an attack on the United States. Look, we are sending them money, missiles, and if the truth be known, I bet you there's American blood in Ukraine that has been spilled attacking Russia. Can't prove that, but probably. As David Sachs says, if you want nuclear war, vote Joe Biden in November. In a way, everybody that, how do I say this, that voted Joe Biden, everybody that helped the cheating that went on, they all have blood on their hands. They all are part. The people that took prayer out of the school, the people that cooperated with taking prayer in the Bible out of America, they're all going to have to report. They're all going to have to give an account for it. Revelation 6 says, the white horse, this just shows you the war, the white horse went forth conquering and to conquer. That's the first seal. The red horse is the second seal. To take peace from the earth that they should kill one another. Sound like what we're doing today? Yep. Now, the third one.
No, Vas, he specifically mentioned it wasn't them. He specifically mentioned it wasn't him. I won't say it out loud in case I get in trouble, but he specifically said it wasn't them.
Measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. What does that mean? Well, what is the wheat? The wheat has to do with tares, wheat and tares. We are the wheat, I believe, and then the barley represents the Jews. So what is
so do I. Let's go back
a measure of wheat for a penny.
I don't know where he mentioned it.
Tony Blinken announced that Ukraine is going to be joining NATO, pushing U.S. closer to nuclear war with Russia. That's right, it is. And so one of these days, Russia is going to be able to say, wait a minute, the U.S. attacked us first. But of course, they're not going to talk. They're not going to threaten more than they already have. They're just going to take us out in 1 hour. So says Revelation 18. So great riches have come to naught in 1 hour. So great riches come to. She saith in her heart, I said a queen, and I'm no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall the plagues come in 1 day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, and every bondman, every free man, hid themselves in the dens of the rocks. Yes, I did memorize the book of Revelation. The point is, we're shooting our own self in the foot. We're walking up the door and opening it real hard right back into our face. We're asking Russia to attack us. Mm-hmm. Secretary of State Tony Blinken says that Ukraine will be joining NATO. Stupid. This article is actually very good, very close. It says the Ukraine is a corrupt, true, non-democratic, true, authoritarian republic known as the most corrupt country in Europe. That's right. This is where I can't say the word again. All these guys I talked to at this conference say, you say that word, they'll take, because that's who they really worship. It's not the deep state. It's not the Khazarian mafia. It's these people. Again,
there you go.
Go read Exodus 32.
There you go. He did say it wasn't the Khazarian mafia. I knew it.
Before it will tell you it's the molten calf, but you got to look up the name of the molten calf to know who it is. These are the same people that own and control the world. And the most country in the world is that area, Ukraine. And the story that I read years ago, centuries ago, they were so bad, they were so evil that the countries around them went to them and said, look, you got to choose a God. You can choose Allah, you can choose Jesus, or you can choose to be Jewish or the Jewish religion. And they chose Jewish. And so a lot of them decided that they were going to be Jews. They went to the Jews and said, look, can we intermarry? And the Jews said, no, can't intermarry with us. So they just started calling themselves Jews. They changed their name, a lot of them, to Jews. But these are the bad people. These are the bad people that call them, even Revelation says that they call themselves Jews.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Synagogue of Satan. It says it 2 times. So these are people that are extremely evil, but they call themselves Jews, but they're not Jews. And they headquarter out of Ukraine. So let's go to the next part here. Under Article 5, this means that an attack on Ukraine will be considered an attack on the United States. Look, we are sending them money, missiles, and if the truth be known, I bet you there's American blood in Ukraine that has been spilled attacking Russia. Can't prove that, but probably. As David Sachs says, if you want nuclear war, vote Joe Biden in November. In a way, everybody that, how do I say this, that voted Joe Biden, everybody that helped the cheating that went on, they all have blood on their hands. They all are part. The people that took prayer out of the school, the people that cooperated with taking prayer in the Bible out of America, they're all going to have to report. They're all going to have to give an account for it. Revelation 6 says, the white horse, this just shows you the war, the white horse went forth conquering and to conquer. That's the first seal. The red horse is the second seal. To take peace from the earth that they should kill one another. Sound like what we're doing today? Yep. Now, the third one, a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. What does that mean? Well, what is the wheat? The wheat has to do with tares, wheat and tares.
It's us.
We are the wheat, I believe. And then the barley represents the Jews. So what it's saying, a measure of wheat for a penny means in the future, between when the black horse, the red horse, the white horse, when those horses are released, from there to the end, about 1/4 of the people that are saved is the wheat or the Gentiles. And about 3/4 of those that are saved are the barley. So from here on out, once the white horse is released, if it has been released, that we're going to see about 1/4 Gentiles saved, but about 3/4 of the people saved will be Jews, because God is going to turn his attention primarily to the Jews. So I encourage you to go to EMP Shield, get yourself this device right here. I've got one right here. Put one of these on your car, one of these on your house, so that when the suitcase nukes hit, I say when the suitcase nukes hit, hopefully your car is still going to start. Promo code is prophecy. So I have not talked about my book.
Okay, and as you're driving the only car that runs in the city, people are just going to watch you do it. They're not going to try and take your car off you, are they?
Books for a long time, but I think it's
He puts a lot of faith in this EMP thing.
probably time. So in 2017, I memorized
Good
the
night,
book of
Di.
Revelation. I didn't think anything special was going to happen, but something special did start happening. I got 30 revelations, 2 visions, and an audible voice. One of the visions showed me a secret door, the word first fruits, which is linked to the feasts of Revelation 14:4, the feast of Leviticus 23, which is linked to Revelation 14:4. That word first fruits links the feasts to the book of Revelation. And for the first time, we can understand in the correct chronological order, we can understand how Revelation plays out, because it's not chronological. It skips all over. One prophetic word says there's a lock that I put over a word in the book of Revelation that I'm going to open to you. I believe that's first fruits. He did not know I'd written a book when he said this. It will turn so many books written on the end time message into obsolete books. Now, one is $20, and I think you get 5 of them for $35. So best deal is get 5, but I'm going to show you a better deal. All right, the next one is Mr. Bark. This is
Okay, guys, he's doing his plugs. So I'm going to hang up, guys. See you tomorrow. God bless. I'm glad I'm back and I missed you.
the number 1 selling book. It's a fast, quick, easy read. If they'll read 3 or 4 pages, they'll read the whole book. If you read the whole book, they will never take Mark of the Beast. I think it sells so well.